I'd like to call to order a meeting of the North Andover School Committee for April 28th. And I'd like to start by rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great. Just a reminder that this evening's meeting is being recorded, and if you'd be so kind as to silence your mobile devices. We have somewhat of a full agenda, but I would like to open to public comment, recognizing that we have a couple things on the chair report that it appears we also will be hearing about tonight. But please, if you can introduce yourself and your residence, and please provide your comment.
Steve Hale, 45 Lacey Street. After being at the last school committee meeting, I saw that there was discussion about naming the resource room after Dr. Hutchinson. And I read and reread what Mr. Limpert wrote, and as a parent who tries to follow what's going on in our district, I was a bit surprised that this was even sort of out there for discussion. I was unaware that recommendations had even been accepted for the naming of the room, especially given the school committee policy regarding dedications and memorials. And while I agree that Dr. Hutchinson was a really nice guy, we have a lot of educators in our district who are pleasant and who have served a lot of their careers here educating our kids. And while some are recognized in the Educators Hall of Fame, we have many who don't get that recognition. And so going ahead and just naming that room very quickly is something to me that I guess, given the newness of this building, I would like to wait and possibly open it up to a broader audience of citizens who have lived in our district for a very long time and who possibly have other people that they are aware of that they think would be great, depending on what the purpose is of us naming rooms or spaces within our district. So that's
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Thank you for your input.
Hi, I'm Mark Rogers, 19 Trinity Court, and I'd like to talk about Article 15 that's appearing on the warrant at town meeting, which seeks to repeal the meals tax, the local options meals tax in North Andover. Now, I have a presentation for you, but I'm not sure how we can skip some of the early pages if you're aware of the dynamics of the. I'm not sure how this works, but the right one. All right, thank you. Shall I start at the beginning about describing what the meals tax is and how it came about? And
I think we know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We did provide comment. We provided comment last week that this may have profound impact, and I think there was some concern over, what is the other side of the conversation.
Okay. So let's skip to a few slides down the road here. This is a chart that shows the revenue in millions of dollars by restaurants, and because the tax is imposed on pre-prepared meals, it also includes things like a pre-prepared chicken you might buy at a supermarket, et cetera. So it's not just restaurants, but it's primarily restaurants. If you look at this chart, it shows, by and large, increases year over year in revenues, total revenues. So it might surprise some people to know that this coming year we anticipate North Andover pre-prepared meals, restaurants, et cetera, to make $69 million, roughly $68.7 million. This is an average 4% growth rate year over year in North Andover. It's actually higher in some of the other communities around. 5 of the 7 attached communities or surrounding communities to North Andover have passed the meals tax. The remaining 2 don't have enough restaurants to make a lot of revenue from that, and I can show you a slide that explains that later. So it's very clear that these numbers, by the way, are post meals tax passing. Right, so in each of these cases, that's why some of the charts have more bars than others, because in North Reading they passed it earlier than the other communities. So in each case, though, with one exception of Andover had a blip in 1 year, there's year-over-year increases, sort of enviable among businesses. So this is a trend that's increasing. Now, it won't increase forever, I think, but it's very clear that the meals tax itself has not had a negative impact on the restaurants, which is fantastic because their growth includes 6 additional restaurants in North Andover alone last year. So this is the detail of revenue earned by restaurants and pre-prepared meals over the past few years in North Andover. This is the meals tax revenue each year. The total of those comes to, and there's one year that's not shown because it was a partial year, so it's a little misleading. It was $140,000 for the year. So the total over the time from 2012 to 2016 is a little over $2 million earned on the meals tax. And given the fact that revenues increased year over year, it's almost impossible to argue that it's been hazardous or harmful to the restaurants in North Andover.
Mr. Chairman, can I just quick question?
Please.
Where do the numbers come from?
They come from the DOR website.
thank you.
Yep. So anyone can go online and download the data and do the numbers. So if we take a look at the fact that 75% of department budgets are labor, this would mean if we lost $500,000 in revenue, this would mean a $375,000 cut in labor. At a $60,000 for a fully loaded position, that's 6.25 jobs lost from the town. With the current 68% split for schools, that would be about 4.25 heads from the schools and 2 from other departments. That would also not include the $125,000 cut from non-labor expenses. And there's no replacement for this revenue. I mean, if we think we're going to plug this by removing money from the stabilization fund or other free cash is non-recurring revenues. It can be that underestimating revenues, being too conservative with your estimates for revenues, can add to free cash. So it might be that the town needs to look at their revenue estimates, and maybe they've been too conservative, but I can tell you, because I was here in the FinCom from 2007 to 2011 when it was pretty miserable, and we had 2 years of negative free cash. No one wants to go through that again, so I'm not surprised that the town is being conservative with their revenue estimates. Some further comparisons here. Out-of-towners pay this tax, and they do consume town services. If they have an accident, our police will respond, and they drive on our roads and they create incremental wear on the roads, et cetera. So this is the only tax that out-of-towners pay and contribute a small amount to providing those services to the town. And we are surrounded by towns that have already passed this. It's also important to note that we haven't filled our reserves yet. We have a 4.3% of stabilization of revenues in our stabilization account. The target for years has been 5%. Our capital fund is well funded, but for small projects only. So we're still going to be borrowing for larger projects. I think there's a lot of people who would like government to pay as you go. And so incurring debt for every little project is not a good thing. So this is a way of paying as you go. And we also have the OPEB liability of $86 million, of which we've only saved $1 million towards that liability. This is a picture of the communities in Massachusetts who have adopted the local options meals tax. I requested a Delta slide. It's a little tricky to do from the time when we passed it, but I can tell you that many more communities have adopted it. And on the next page, it shows a blowout of the communities that surround us that have adopted the meals tax. So one might ask, why wouldn't everyone adopt this tax? And the answer is that if you look at this chart, between those who have adopted it and those who have not, the DOR publishes tax revenues that come in, because if you have a restaurant in your town, they pay the normal 6.25% tax. So they publish those revenues. So these numbers are quite real from the DOR. This is a split. It's an easy split to do between the revenues of the towns, the meals tax revenues of the towns that have passed the meals tax and those that have not. So it's patently clear that $7,000 a month is not nearly as compelling as $41,000 a month. And therefore, communities, maybe rightfully so, don't worry about it. it's not a big enough thing to make a difference. But having said that, there are some towns that have modest earnings and still have chosen to pass the meals tax. And I would say, let's see if I brought it. I didn't bring it with me, but Jim, it's on the slide. But anyway, one of the smaller communities. Let me go back just a couple slides here. Let's see, it's Georgetown. Very small revenues coming from Georgetown, but they passed it anyway. So we have unmet needs and unmet goals. We have new leaders in almost all positions in the top slots in town, and I think we're asking them to drive change in this town and drive new goals in this town. And without this revenue, it's going to be putting a handcuff on them to achieve those goals. So I would urge people to support this.
Great. Thank you very much for taking your time this evening and sharing with us.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
To actually pass it for the yes vote, which is what the warrant is for, is it a 2/3 or a simple majority?
It's very likely to be a simple majority.
Okay.
Mr. Tracy, do you agree?
Okay.
Yes.
Simple, yeah. Simple.
Okay, I just didn't remember. I knew some of them were 2/3 and some.
It actually passed by 7 votes.
What's that?
So
Right.
it passed by a simple majority.
Okay.
So is it helpful for me to be clear what 4.25 positions means in the North Andover
Yeah, I
Public
think that
Schools?
would be helpful just to have that conversation.
So it means the library, additional library media specialist, both the full one and the embedded librarian. It means the world language teacher at the, so that's 1.5. It means the world language teacher at the middle school. It means the 2 elementary positions that we had to start building for when we get more space. So that's 4.5 right there. So that's pretty much everything I proposed in the additional kind of changes that we talked about. It's basically that. Just so we're clear. So it's library, it's world language, and it's elementary class size.
Okay, that's very significant for us, and again, I appreciate you coming to
Thank you very much
enlighten
for
the
this.
school community on the impact of this one article. Mr. Tracy?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know, obviously, with one article like this, the Board of Selectmen and the FinCom make a recommendation to town meeting. The school committee doesn't have a formal role, but if it would please my colleagues, I think I'd like to make a motion that we go on record and say we oppose this one article, and we urge voters to vote no for it. And when the time comes to town meeting, that I would ask the chairman to articulate that on the floor of town meeting.
And it sounds like a reasonable motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion to formally be in opposition on Article 19 at town meeting? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All abstained. Thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Tracy, and I appreciate your leadership here. Great. Thank you. Any more public comment before we move on in our agenda? Hearing none. We have an NA next recognition. Is that nothing this evening?
Nothing.
Okay, very good. Although there is plenty of recognition going on.
Tons going on. I mean, basically, our high school students were all over the globe last week,
Yes.
so we'll talk more about that. But
Coming soon to a school
Yeah.
meeting for near you. Student reports. Nothing's going on at Courtney.
Hello. Things are really great right now. We have, as Dr. Price said previously, students are literally all over the entire country right now. We just had our robotics team, how I spoke about earlier in the previous meeting. We have 2 teams that were competing in the World's Robotics Championship, and they were there for a week down in Louisville, Kentucky, I believe. And they absolutely killed it. Like, they had 2 teams finish in the top 10, I believe, out of 110 teams or something like that, and they just had a great job. I have classes with a bunch of them. They had so much fun about it, with it. And one student in particular, Saurabh Kumar, he said to me, he says, I was in Virginia for chorus, and then the next day I was down in Kentucky for robotics. So, and this kid's a brilliant student, so hats off to him. The AP tests are coming up soon, so that's a big thing for most students. I've taken the government one, so that's May 10th, so
next week.
time to cram an entire textbook into my brain in 2 weeks. Also, we have students down in Nashville, Tennessee for the DECA National championship. And they have, as we spoke about earlier about the Relay for Life, there was the 3 students, Emma Bilecki, Becca Riedel, and Shan McElroy. They all did their DECA presentation on what they did. They did an entrepreneurship skit on it, and they did such a great job presenting it and how they had a great project to show for it. They got all the way down to nationals, and they're doing a great job down there. We have also people who are not presenting or did not make it to the nationals tournament, but they are being recognized for their leadership in DECA throughout the years, so there are going to be some students being awarded for that as well. Spring sports are in full swing. That's going great right now. Baseball team is doing phenomenal. I haven't heard on what they did today, but they played Drake-it, and they have only 1 loss this season to Burlington. So
We have students over in France.
over in France as well for the
And in Germany, too.
yep.
And Germany.
So the world, I should say, students
Yes.
all over the world.
Talking about all over the nation also, the chorus kids, when they went to Virginia, they won in all 4 gold medals, 2 each for the chorus and for the band. And Frank Zhao, the chorus's pianist, also won an award.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, gold again. We're going to need bigger cabinets in the high school.
We're going to need a bigger trophy case.
Yeah.
Maybe we can invest some money into that.
Great. Anything else?
That's it for me.
Thank you very much for your updates. and
Thank you, guys.
finals here, So enjoy.
Good luck, guys.
Good luck indeed.
Thank you.
I'd like to move on to the consent agenda. Take a motion to accept the meeting minutes as presented in the packet.
So moved.
And second? Second. Great. So, any comments, any additions, deletions, or corrections? Nope, hearing none. All in favor of accepting the meeting minutes as presented, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Abstained? Great, so it's 5-0-0. Moving on, Chair report. I'm going to kind of be brief because I know we have a full agenda. I'm also going to share with some on the committee. Mr. McDevitt and I attended, actually, as did others in the school committee, attended the Pristash Awards. That was a week and a half ago, if I recall. Well-earned honors by all volunteers, and it was a different venue. Mr. McDevitt, did you want to provide a comment? Or?
I just think it was a fantastic opportunity, really, for our community to get together. And, you know, the Pristash Award obviously kind of highlights 3 specific volunteers at the elementary, the middle school, and the high school level. But it was a night of just celebrating kind of volunteerism of all of the parents who kind of give, and members of the community who really give to our students on a regular basis in ways big and small. And they changed how we do it, or how they did it. It was kind of a donation-based event, and I think it was more crowded this year than it was, and I think they were more successful this year than they have been in the past. And the Pristashes were pleased. They're very humbled, and they really kind of always say, you know, that they don't necessarily feel like it should have been deserving of that the award should be in their name, but it was really, you know, kind of at the point where they were in the community, and there were so many people who kind of helped set that stage for them. But they were lucky enough to be the recipients of, or who it was named for, and it's great that they're still able to attend and be recognized for kind of raising the bar.
And what's kind of nice is this year was really a celebration of volunteerism in the schools as well. And I know Dr. Price had a very interesting opening statement, really captured her thoughts of what makes North Andover slightly different than other communities in the sense of community. So thank you, and again, congratulations to this year's award winners. While you're up, do you want to provide a quick update on Hall of Fame nominations? How are we doing?
Sure. So, I can't speak. Nominations for the North Andover Educator Hall of Fame are due by May 15th, I believe. So we have started to receive some nominations at this point, but there are still probably, 18 days or so left for nominations to come in, and they are for the brief requirements are they must have given or served the majority of their career in North Andover and have to have been retired for 5 years or more to be recognized.
And those forms are on the school website?
Correct. Thank you. Those forms are on the school website. You want to get the report?
No, I can't remember all this.
The forms are on the website, and you can either drop them off to the central office, mail them in, or I think print and email them off to myself or Bev Zagari.
Excellent, thank
Did I
you.
forget anything, Mr. Gross?
No, it's all good. It's all good. The other thing I wanted to present on the chair's report is that Mr. Tracy and I were in attendance at the first shared town council review with the town manager and others. Mr. Tracy, would you like to provide?
Sure. So, first of all, thank you to the Board of Selectmen and to Chairwoman Tracy Watson for creating this Legal Affairs Subcommittee. As you know, and hopefully the public knows, we are undertaking something, absolutely brand new and something that I've never seen happen in I'd say 30 or 40 years that we've had the form of government we've had, but a shared town council. Historically, the town has had their town council. We've had our school council, and there's been a movement by the Board of Selectmen and the town manager to bring someone in-house. It's something that we haven't had before. So we've appointed the subcommittee to discuss a job description, a timeline for posting the job, and interview process, which myself and Chairman Gross will be part of. So, going forward, I think the important aspect is that we feel comfortable with the job description first and foremost, and make sure that the town council recognize that we have a little bit different needs than the town. I mean, obviously, this would be a position that would be physically situated in Town Hall, but the thing that I wanted to make sure, and I think Chair, Town Manager Mailer and Selectman DiCollegiero, who were present, I made it clear, and with the support of Chairman Gross, to make sure we have access, good, constant access to this person, whoever it may be. And that's been my biggest concern going forward. I think it's a great opportunity to have quote-unquote boots on the ground, as opposed to having someone have to call up and worry about, you know how lawyers can be, and bill by the minute. But irrespective of that, I do think that the team is working together to find a person, and going forward, I think that's the main message we'll continue to bring forward, that we need to have good access to this person. As you know, our school policy and Mass General Law allows us, if for some reason we're unhappy with the situation, we do have the opportunity to go and hire our own counsel. We'll probably do that on special ed and other issues like that. But I think it was a good first meeting, and again, thank you to Town Manager Mailer and the selectmen for including us in the process. Because ultimately it's still their appointment. So, but they are including us in the entire process going forward.
Absolutely, and I know that there's a new draft job description that Dr. Price is going to be reviewing and providing input as well. And again, I echo the sentiment. Thank you for making this as an opportunity for shared resource. And ultimately, the goal is to lower overall legal fees or legal outlay. So,
what's the basic timeline?
I would say sometime this summer. Hopefully, we'd have someone in. The job description, unfortunately, Dr. Price was in another meeting, and Selectman Watson was in another meeting at the time, so we weren't able to finalize the job description, but I think we made some great progress. The Board of Selectmen did have a very lively debate about it on Monday night, and there are some internal concerns there, but I like to think that the five of us are on the same page going forward. And
if I could, I think the one thing that we might want to consider is revisiting, or at least establishing what our process would be for access as board members and/or as superintendent, just to ensure that we don't run into a situation where we're becoming a burden, and similarly that we don't have the insights and the ability to reach out and contact as necessary. So something we could evaluate during our retreat or as part of a policy review in general.
I'm not sure if we'll have to take a formal vote. We may want to do that when the time comes, because obviously I've only been on the board for a year and a half now, but we've never taken a vote to. The town charter mandates that the Board of Selectmen appoint a town council every year. In June, they have to take a vote, a specific vote. We don't have that. We've had the same town council for 8 years now. I'm sorry, the same school attorney for 8 years now. And
Special ed attorney longer, I believe.
Yeah. So we haven't taken a formal vote, but I think we probably should have to do that. And I don't know what the process to notify our current school attorney, but we should think about how we're going to address that as well.
Do you think, Mr. Tracy, if we do keep a separate council for special education, we should try to vote that every year?
I don't think that is actually a role of the school committee, but we should double check. I actually think that
Selected by the special ed
the special ed director
Oh,
makes
for
that
that,
decision.
for the-
It's not even my
for that.
decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also
Pretty
like to see
clear.
us participating in the evaluation of council as well. So that's another area that I think we want to think through.
Yeah, and again, it's something that we'll have to revisit every year, as the selectmen will as well, and maybe, we should consider changing our policy if we do go this route and we do adopt or do agree to use the town council for our school attorney. We should maybe change our school policy at that point.
The good point you raised. I think at a minimum, something, let's say in the annual review as an employee, right, we should be party to that. The school committee should somehow be party to that review process, annual review process, so we could provide our feedback as to how it's gone for the previous. So that would be another thing to be, for, you all to be thinking about.
Agreed. I think Mr. Mailer is very flexible and forward-thinking in how he's approaching this, and how financial impact to municipal versus school side will be over time. So I think it's a good pilot to evaluate, and I think if we can get a good candidate in, it will really help us a lot. So look forward to moving forward with this.
The underlying message is, I would say, that the boards are working well together, and I think we're moving in the right direction. We're not there yet, but feel very positive about how we're going.
Great, thank you. That's all I have for the chair report. Superintendent.
Yeah, I have a few quick things. As of now, the last day of school will be June 22nd. I understand that ever since the DESE changed their policy, we don't take an official vote this time of year because, as Bev has told me numerous times, you've had floods in May and had to cancel school, so we're not really allowed to vote the last day. until
Once.
June.
Once, I'm not sure numerous times.
Well, I just...
Once is enough.
Mr. Gary remembers. So, I think for all intents and purposes, the last day of school at this point is June 22nd. So I just wanted to make that, and then we will officially vote that in June. But for anyone listening or caring, that, at this point, I would think you can think about getting out of town the afternoon of June 22nd, if that is something you and your family.
The snow blows away.
Yes, I think, I want to announce that after a very thorough external process, we have, Dr. McQuaid has made the decision to appoint Steve Wrigley as the new assistant principal at NAMS. He was one of 3 finalists, the other 2 being folks outside of the district. Went through a very rigorous process of which Mr. Gilligan and Mr. Mealy and I all participated. We walked through classrooms with the 3 finalists. We interviewed the finalists. The teachers got to interview the finalists. The kids got to interview the finalists, something that is new under my leadership, the rigor of our hiring processes. In terms of consistently across the board. So Dr. McQuaid feels very excited about Mr. Wrigley as our new assistant principal.
He's a math teacher.
He's a math teacher in 7th grade.
6th grade.
6th grade, sorry. And he did a very, I think all 3 of us can talk. He did a really good job, and I look forward to watching him grow as a leader at NAMS. And the faculty was very supportive of his appointment. So just wanted to let you know that.
Great.
We spent 6.5 hours in this room today and 2 hours yesterday. Joy O'Connor's in the room. She's now on her 8th hour in the room. A team of about 14 of us interviewing potential candidates for the assistant superintendency of student services. Very across the district team of folks interviewing. We had basically every school represented, a parent, and an amazing student by the name of Katie Packard, who just is inspiring to all of us, I would say. Is that fair? And we interviewed 8 candidates. I am hopeful, if I can get out of this meeting and start making some phone calls, that I will be able to announce 4 finalists tomorrow for the position. We will bring them in next week or the following week. So I'm very excited about where we're moving. I think any of us involved in the search would say that we're very excited about the strength of our pool, and changing the job to an assistant superintendent dramatically changed the quality of and depth of the pool.
Great.
And we're very excited about some of the people we had the opportunity to meet. So.
What's the, Dr. Price, what's the process for the finals?
Yeah, so it's the same as we did last time when we didn't. It'll be a half day for each finalist in the district. It'll include meeting with staff. It'll include meeting with the whole full leadership team. It'll include walking through some classrooms with the 3 of us. It'll also include looking at some of our special ed data and looking at an IEP. So it's a pretty rigorous task-based, but also, and also meeting with parents.
And what's your hope in terms of being able to complete the process?
I would love to say it would be next week, but one of our finalists is, she doesn't, never mind. One of our finalists is out of the country next week, so it'll probably be about 2 weeks.
Okay.
And is NAPAC included in
Yeah,
that?
so the head of NAPAC is on the interview committee, and
Okay.
NAPAC is the one who hosts the parent coffee.
Excellent.
Intimately
Sounds like
involved.
a quite robust process.
Yeah, would you agree with that, Ms. O'Connor?
Very much so.
And we had some.
question?
No, I mean.
The tone of it suggests.
Would you agree with that, Ms. O'Connor?
Yeah.
Joy? Any
Smiling, smiling at all.
Joy, any comments on the process? How's that, Mr. Tracy?
Excellent, excellent.
Thank you very much. Ms. O'Connor, please. It's going well, and it is wonderful to see, with excitement and passion that we have out there. It'll be, I think we'll all be pleased.
Very good.
Great.
Thank you.
And then just quickly, as I think I wrote about and I've talked to you guys about, we are doing this food rescue project at the middle school, and we're in our 4th day of it. And Christy, if you would just come to the mic for a second, it's pretty exciting what we've got going on at the middle school.
I sent a picture to Mr. Mealy. He's going to try.
And if you are bored, I've become internet famous through a YouTube video that Miss Hale made me do supporting the food project. Do you know that that's like gone viral?
That
Oh, yeah.
Dr. Price and Mr. Richard happily participated in. to get
Correct,
the kids
happily
excited
participated in.
about doing
Is that
it.
your?
It's great.
Is that your?
Did you?
It's my acting debut, Mr. Tracy, and I think you don't have to worry about me having a career in Hollywood. I think I'm stuck here.
The video that Dr. Price mentioned was shown to all of the middle school students the week before break to give them an idea of what it is that we're doing, which is food rescue, and I do encourage all of you. I really should put it up somewhere. We should put it up somewhere.
I will provide it to you as part of my evidence for my evaluation.
They did a it was good, right? Ms. Mabley would testify to that it really was good. It was well received by the kids. They very much enjoyed the presentation. Mr. Richard has a very
Dry sense of humor.
He does. He's awesome. The kids adore him, and so he has a very strong following. So as you can see, this was actually on a day we hadn't even intended on collecting. The Friday where we demonstrated, where we told the kids about what we were doing, and we showed them the video. We held up the bin of, this is what the bin is going to look like, and it's going to be over here. And all of a sudden, all of these kids, after we gave, because I gave a little bit of a presentation with it, started putting in their food for the kids that day. So all of these fruit cups that you can see in the front, unfortunately, we can't give those. Well, I should back up. The way the food is being distributed, it is first going to our school nurses in the Atkinson, Thompson, and Kittredge schools, and the middle school nurses are also taking fresh fruit because they have a number of kids who come down every day with various issues. Either they've shown up with headaches, they're not feeling quite right, and most of the time it originates because they haven't had anything to eat yet. So they have been very happy with some of the products. They also have a number of diabetics in the building, so it's good for them to be able to have juice on hand to keep for them as well. After that, the food goes to either local food banks or homeless shelters. And the reason for the homeless shelters, not that we're not happy to share with them, anything that was prepared in the kitchen, which is not completely sealed, like these fruit cups, based on food policy and donation exception, people who can accept, they have to take it completely sealed up, and unfortunately these aren't sealed, so therefore we don't want to just throw it away, but they are happy to take it. We have worked with Daybreak over in Lawrence, who are happy to take some of the donations, and we have another group coming tomorrow, which hopefully it pans out. Lazarus House will be doing actual pickups, so we won't have to get the food transported to them. However, this is just at the middle school, and on any given day we probably collect 40 to 50 pounds of food on any given day. So
Wow.
in just this week, we've already sent 2 probably half-filled milk crates between the middle school, Atkinson, and Thompson. That fast. And we have a pile of stuff as dry
Can you
goods.
say that number again?
50 pounds. And that's what we collect. I'm not selling any of our students out here, but I think that if we were to video just what's getting thrown into the trash bins, parents would be mortified to watch the food that gets thrown away that we can't do anything with. And lunch, including lunches from home, that kids literally just take it and discard it.
From this experience, though, do you think this will give us some ideas for how to modify the lunch program?
Well, Erica Murphy has actually been with us several of the days this week to see, and she said the exact same thing. It's very good and very telling for her to see what types of things come back versus what types of things get consumed by the kids. Pears are not.
Those are all from a school lunch.
This was from a school lunch. Pears are not a big favorite. Baked apples are not a big favorite. But it really just depends on the day. Like, some of the kids are really good about it. You'll see the whole fruit in the background. That was fruit from home. That wasn't even anything that was served at the lunch that day. So, I mean, kids are putting their food there, which for those of us that are standing there every day, because we're also helping them recycle and reminding them that there's a dump bucket to dump your liquid waste, to make sure you recycle your container so that it's not, weighing down the trash for lots of reasons. However, one of our goals is to remind them they can take this food home. Like, they don't have to donate it. That's the first priority of, well, don't you want to eat that after school, or could you maybe? And for a lot of them, they're like, no, I'm good. And they just drop it in the bin. So I don't want parents to think that somehow we're asking them to send extra food in so that the kids can donate it and share with other kids. But they know that it's going to other people in the district, and they're happy to contribute to that. I just don't want parents upset thinking that they are feeding every other child in North Andover, because in actuality we are asking them to take their food back home with them if they're not interested in consuming it.
Now, the food that's going in the trash is stuff that you couldn't recycle.
No, we can't. But I mean, it's like whole sandwiches or things that came from home in a baggie. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah.
I think that, at least at Thompson, with the younger grades at a minimum, the lunch people make the children bring home what they didn't eat so their parents can see what they're not eating.
And I think
Is
that
that
could
a policy
happen more
across
at the
the district?
elementary schools, where at the middle
It is
schools
a
it's just a
kid
very
lunch.
different
Yeah,
thing.
the
There's two
parents
adults
need
who
to
walk
know
around.
what's not happening.
Right. So I think that having a video camera just focused on what's getting added to the bins would just be interesting for people to see, at least to have a conversation with their kids of, hey, if you don't like it, we don't have to pack that tomorrow. But anyway, I think it's been really great. We have a lot of people who are very happy and excited. I know Mr. Landry was very excited to receive the fruits and vegetables for his school yesterday and today. I believe they rolled it out yesterday and already went through all of the fruit that we had given them, so we filled another bin today.
That's super.
Yeah, that might be good, at the end of lunch, just take your phone and take a snapshot of what you got, right?
Yeah, Miss Erica Murphy took a lot of pictures the one day. We had everything lined up across after the 3 lunches, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm posting this." I mean, it was a lot.
It'll be in the my June newsletter, some of the pictures.
Yeah.
It was just too late for me.
Super program. Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Okay. With the committee's approval, I'd like to flip new business and old business so we can be respectful of the time from Ms. Carbone and Ms. Yeardley, if that's okay. Okay. So move on to our special ed presentation.
I'm just going to set this up very quickly while they come up to the table. So earlier in the year, in looking at the special education supports here within North Andover, something I know we've talked quite a bit about, thought that it would make some sense to bring in a consultant to help us look at what would be a strategy and a plan for us as we move forward in special education. And I have the very, very good fortune of knowing Dorsey Yearley, who used to be the Director of Special Education in Wellesley and then ran the EDCO Collaborative for a number of years and is now a highly sought-after special education consultant in Massachusetts. That's all true. You know it's true. Through our sheer luck, and I think Ms. Carbone would agree with me on this, agreed to make the trek up to North Andover a number of times to kind of help us think. And I think both Leanne and I have felt very supported by Dorsey this year. I think the entire leadership team has felt supported by Dorsey, and I am really pleased with the depth and breadth of what she is presenting to us tonight in terms of, as you know, Leanne is going to retire. And I feel that was done mid kind of shift on this, and I think Dorsey's done a very nice job of laying out for whomever we bring on as our assistant superintendent for student services. This is going to be a blueprint for that person and is going to actually have them ahead of the start line when they arrive in July 1st.
Fabulous.
There you go.
Thank you.
PJ.
Absolutely. So, the basic idea of a strategic plan is you answer 4 questions. Where are we? Which is kind of the information gathering of what we're doing. Where do we want to go? Which is the kind of vision process. How do we get there? which are the goals, and then how do we know we're making a difference, which is the measurement of the goals. And that's the basic structure of this.
Just to be clear, in your packets is the report. This is not in your packet, so,
Okay.
but the full report, which everything she's talking about is in your
Right.
packet.
I tried to put together some slides to highlight it. The report, it probably goes way down into the weeds
The
more than we
report
would
speaks for
want to
itself.
discuss
Absolutely.
tonight.
Absolutely.
So really, to figure out where we are now, with, may I call you Leanne? Do we do this wrong? It's school committee. She was very gracious. We went on tours of the buildings. She introduced me to everybody. We had multiple opportunities to talk to a variety of people with a variety of responsibilities, including the central office and the team leaders. And made all of the formal documents about program reviews, private program reviews, a lot of district data available. In addition, there's public data on the DESE website that helps you sometimes make some comparisons with comparable communities. Having done that, the next step for us was to work with the special education leadership to establish a vision for special education, and we'll look at what that is. But it complements the mission of the district, but it tries to fill out with more detail what special education needs to be doing in order to complement the mission of the district. And then we kind of bore down and tried to come up with some goals. So this is going fast. I did want to give the school department credit for everything that has happened since the previous very comprehensive review done by the Walker Partnerships. And you can see that in the last 3 years, essentially, the special ed department has created a number of programs to build capacity within the district to meet the needs of the students here, has increased the leadership, and has defined those programs. So I think it's really important to acknowledge that a lot has been done since that review. And where we are now is that I think it's, with the development of these programs, it's an appropriate time to step back, kind of get back up to 40,000 feet and say, what do we need to do and where do we want to go? And our conversations and the data supported the idea that one of the things that would be helpful to focus on is really creating a strong culture of inclusive practice, a strong shared ownership of the support for students with special needs. Another one is to make sure that we have consistent practice across the district, and certainly some of the changes, including the development of the Student Services Department and the creation of the Assistant Superintendency is going to help with that enormously. With all of the programs having been in place for a couple of years, it's a good time to step back and say, how do they align vertically? And also, how have the needs changed since the establishment of those programs to make sure that we are still building capacity and meeting the existing needs? And then the last is always to make sure that as the administrator for student services, the leader can say we are using our resources in the most effective and efficient way. I know that special education is always a large portion of any school budget, and we all know that the services are mandated. But beyond that, I think it is the obligation of the school leadership to say we are using effective practices, and once we've determined those effective practices, we've deployed our staff and our programming to say to you, we're doing this as efficiently as we can. And so that's always a lens that I think it's important to put all of the special education programming and staffing through. Is it efficient and is it effective? So here's the mission, just in case you haven't read your website recently. And I think, the mission to cultivate a respectful community of engaged learners, insightful thinkers, and effective communicators is very much supported by the more fully developed special education vision. And if you look at this, a vision should be the kind of key attributes of a program that you want people to remember. And you can see that the department said, we want our key attributes to be that we're collaborative, that we have both a robust system of general education supports for diverse learners and a highly developed system of supports for students with identified special needs, such that we can provide within district the maximum supports. And so I think those three attributes, the collaboration, the kind of general education supports, and the special education supports being very high quality, were the kind of talking points that the department would like for people to think of when they think of special education in North Andover. So in order to do that, for me, I conceptually organize the process around three big areas of focus. One is school culture. Is the culture supportive of what we want to do? The next is instructional practice, both for general education and special education teachers. And the third is the nuts and bolts. Do we have the structures in place? Do we have, if we believe in inclusive practices, do we have the common planning time? Do we have the appropriate schedules? Do we have the appropriate programming, the appropriate staffing? And all three of those have to kind of move forward simultaneously in order to make, I think, a significant change. So what we found in terms of getting started is that the priorities revolved around both creating collaborative opportunities and inclusive practice, opportunities for general education and special education teachers to work together, opportunities for departments to work together. And I think, having talked to the central administration staff here, everybody's very much in support of that. Next, to really look at the practices, make sure that across the district, school by school, there's consistent practice and decision-making, and I think also consistent support in terms of supervision and evaluation for staff. And we'll talk about some of the changes that have already happened in order to make this more possible. To continue looking at the programs for students with intensive needs to make sure they're aligned and meeting the needs of students, and then really to look at this resource issue. So what has already happened this year in order to kind of get the stage set for some significant work next year is that the creation of the Student Services Department, in my opinion, already signals that the support services that are general education services and that are special education services are going to be working in a cooperative and a collaborative way, which is the direction that the district wants to go in, which I believe really supports all learners in the best way. In addition, there will be some building-based support at the secondary level that provides both program monitoring, but supervision, direct supervision of special education staff, which I think will be very important, both to relieve the principals of the responsibility, but also to have people with specialized knowledge base helping the special educators and supporting them in their professional growth. Already, some of your district-wide initiatives around writing, for example, the special education staff has been joining these professional development opportunities with the general education staff. I think when people learn together, they collaborate better, and I think it's a very simple way to begin that collaborative process that's going on now. Some of the adjustments that need to happen for changes in programming by the fall of next year are already happening with the within district programs. There are two strong variables that I think you need to kind of hold side by side when you're looking at within district programs. One is always increasing the capacity within the district, but the other is ensuring that you have a respectful learning group for any given cohort of students. And sometimes you balance the need, the desire to create capacity within the district with whether or not having one or two or three kids with a similar need is actually creating a respectful learning opportunity for them. And so you kind of look at both of those, and that is going on now with some, I think, good planning in place so that programs will be both supportive of students within district and supportive of students who are relatively isolated within district right now. And then already, in order to increase the capacity within district, a BCBA has been hired who will be working with teachers this year and will be working over the summer to increase the capacity of your paraprofessional staff, to hire and train paraprofessional staff who will be able to provide home supports and in-school supports for students with behavioral needs. Currently, those supports are being done with contracted services providers. And when you have enough of a need to bring it in-house, I think it's a very good idea, A, because you have control over the quality of the staff, and B, because it's usually more cost-effective to have your own employees rather than use contractors.
So it's super quick. What is a BCBA?
A board thank you. A board-certified behavior analyst.
Okay.
It is a specialist within the special education department who helps teachers and staff provide appropriate behavior programs for kids with challenging behaviors. Many of these students are on the autism spectrum, not all. And they are very skillful at creating behavior plans that then other staff can implement so that children increase in self-regulation and decrease in disruptive behaviors.
Okay.
And just to be clear, we actually are converting a teaching position to BCBA next year using some savings from contracted services. We're actually able to bring that person on starting this Monday.
She started.
Yeah, it does start
Used twice already.
Yeah, she was working in Winchester, and she's now splitting her time between Winchester 3 days a week and us 2 days a week. So that as we think about developing this model and support, she's here this spring, so it's not all of a sudden just happening in the fall. So we were able to get very creative, and we're very excited to have her on board.
Okay. Thank you.
I had the same question.
Stop me. I try not to speak in tongues, but stop me.
That's all right.
So for next year, the focus, I think, will, what we're suggesting is that the focus will be on developing the leadership, so that over the summer, it would be wonderful to provide principals and central office leadership the opportunity to work together on developing a shared understanding of what inclusion is, what inclusive practice is, coming up with some building-based plans for given, what is going on specifically in any one of your schools, what to look for, what to acknowledge, where people might need training, what you want to kind of reward and monitor and improve. So around inclusive practice. That's one of the leadership focuses. I think the other one will be around working with the new administrators who will be supervising and evaluating special education staff, and the existing principals who will continue that responsibility at the elementary level, to make sure you have a shared understanding of what excellence in special education looks like. It's my personal feeling that while the skill set for special education teachers and general education teachers overlaps, it's a Venn diagram. It is not a perfect overlap, and understanding what are some of the unique skills and talents that a special educator has to have to be really excellent at their job is, I think, worth talking about, particularly because you will have new administrators. The other areas of focus, I think, for next year include needs assessment. If still establishing what is it that our faculty knows, what is it that they need to know, both in terms of general ed instructional practice and special ed instructional practice. What programs are we using in special education? What programs do we want to be using? Really spending the year gathering that information so you can make an informed plan about ongoing professional learning. And then in part because the district-wide data shows that currently the students who seem to be requiring out-of-district placements at a greater proportion than students of other disability types are students with emotional disabilities, to continue next year to look at that, to increase the capacity, to ensure that we are offering what the kinds of supports that will keep students in-house whenever it's appropriate, and that we're not finding ourselves having to place students out of district because we haven't done what we need to do in-house, but particularly for next year around the students with emotional disabilities. That's a big chunk for year one. That's a lot, but I think that would be a great kind of focus. And in year two, essentially, having done a good needs assessment, year two would be the implementation, the beginning of a focused implementation of some of the training for teachers. Certainly monitoring for consistency, monitoring for high quality supervision evaluation would continue. I think continuing to look and adjust the within district programs is literally an ongoing responsibility of the administrator. The students presenting themselves change, and it is the district's obligation to change the programs to meet the needs of students, not cram the students into existing programs. So that will be an ongoing responsibility. And then the district has some response to intervention systems in place. Response to intervention is also known in Massachusetts as MTSS, the Massachusetts Tiered System of Support. It's a structured general education way to ensure that students get increasingly intensive instruction based on using screening instruments and other data sources to make sure that you're targeting the right kids and giving them what they need. I think not this coming year, but the next year, really beginning to look at that with the idea of more of an implementation in year three would be an ambitious but doable goal. And that kind of takes you out 3 years. I want to make sure that people understand that this is a blueprint, nothing is cast in concrete, and that a good strategic plan, you stop at the end of every year and say, where are we? Did we meet our targets? If we didn't, why not? What should we be doing differently? And how do we need to adjust our targets for next year? And I also know that Dr. Price is doing the same kind of thinking for the district as a whole. So this plan would be part of a broader plan, and because of that, it may, appropriately be adjusted to fit into a timeline that would meet some other objectives that the district has. So my final thought, and this is because I really do believe that we can do great things when we include children with diverse needs in our schools, is that we all benefit when inclusion is done well. And this is not my quote, it is an anonymous quote, but it's one I live by, which is that diversity is the one true thing that we all have in common. So we should be celebrating it. So I thank you. That was a lot of talking. Happy to answer any questions.
I'd like to start by first thanking you for joining and helping us get through these very courageous conversations that we've had to have. Looking inside and looking in areas that we might not have been comfortable looking at. So thank you very much. Very comprehensive report and very actionable. The one question that I have is, do you have a sense of what those targets are that we should be reviewing annually to fine-tune the strategy?
I think that...
We told you he was going to ask that.
Well, and the reason that they're not in there is because right now we don't know what they are.
And that's fine.
Part of what would happen this summer, perhaps, in a leadership institute is to do some assessment about where are we in the big variables that we know are part of effective inclusive practice, and then setting some targets once you've done that information gathering. If you notice, the goals all have ways to be measured. The targets are not there. That will need to be included on an annual basis. So it may be that school A has some good co-teaching going on, but some very weak opportunities around collaborative planning, and some teachers that aren't as skilled, some special educators that aren't as skilled in specially designed instruction, and they may have one set of targets, and another school may have another set of targets. So
I do think that there is some data that you do present in here, Dorsey, that begins to talk about where some areas would be. So for instance, when you look at the percentage of special education budget spent on out-of-district tuitions, North Andover, among the ones that we compared, is the highest. I don't think that's where any of us in North Andover want to be.
Right.
And I also think if you look at the ELA and Math MCAS performance of our students on IEPs, it's just not where we want to be either. So I think there are some beginnings of the targets. I mean, those are two that jumped out at us, but I think those aren't enough. And so it's not that we haven't thought about it, it's just that there would be more definition of it.
And, I'm sorry, all I was going to say, and I think identifying the increment of change, which I believe is a good thing. I mean, when I say a target, I say we want to bring back or we want to avoid outplacement by developing programs, and we want to see this level of shift. But that, on an annual basis, needs to be done. You may set some targets around the growth percentiles, rather than say we're going to see an absolute increase in the performance on MCAS, because it's not MCAS anymore, it's PARC.
We're MCAS one more year.
Well, you're still doing, okay. So
Just
you're
us.
MCAS
33%. We're laggards,
Right, okay, never mind.
That's
But
MCAS 2.0,
still, you
isn't
may
it?
want to look at growth percentile rather than absolute performance. You want to pick your targets, and you want to name them so people know what they're aiming for.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
But those would be my exact questions. So the follow-up would be, those are the two things that jumped out at me. First is, and back to your Venn diagram. So we're talking about all the issues and requirements and needs on the special education side, dealing with students from that point of view. But then we're combining that with the academics, right?
Yes.
And that seems to me to be a pretty complicated problem. I mean, just trying to address the curriculum alone is, it's daunting in its own way. So how does that work? How does that process go, where you're now trying to draw a bigger picture around the Venn diagram and say, okay, I'm going to do all of this? How does that work?
Well, first of all, you set a realistic time frame. Part of what I think is helpful to do is to say, in 5 years, where would we like to be? Which is kind of the way this plan is structured. And then, although this is about special education, there's no question that the general education practice is hugely important in terms of supporting the needs of students with disabilities. The bottom line is the vast majority of students spend less than 20% of their time working with a special educator. So most of their learning is happening in general education classes. And that's why having Mr. Gilligan and the new administrator of student services sit down together and say, how can we do this together? It may be that the first thing you want to do is assess the extent to which general education teachers have an understanding of differentiation and special education teachers have an understanding of targeted instruction relative to reading. But you do it a little bite at a time, and you're very clear about what you're working on and why. And you keep a long-term vision. I mean, it's not going to happen tomorrow.
No,
And I would say that's where this idea of this vision coalescing with the shared vision we're going to create over the next few months is really important. Let me just give you a very concrete example. Dorsey articulates that really this is about shared ownership and general education teachers working collaboratively with special education teachers and owning these are all our kids, no matter what label is on them or not. And the need for intense differentiation within classes, that is very hard with the sixth highest average class size in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So when we think about where we're headed, this is going to be a complex solution. I mean, if we're really going to push our teachers to differentiate, having 28 kids in a third grade classroom makes that very difficult. So we can't really do this in isolation. It's more about a comprehensive approach.
So, and then back to your other point about the outplacement, the amount of money we spend on outplacement, which seems to be relatively high.
It is.
If we drill down one level below that one chart, would there be indications of where we ought to start building?
Social, emotional.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And
language-based learning.
One of the things that I think will be helpful is to have a very clear tracking capacity around who's going out, what grade level, what disability type, what are the 5-year patterns, what do we project. That kind of data is available from the business office, and I know that Leanne and Jim have worked on developing that kind of longitudinal data. What it shows is, right now, the largest proportion of students that you are placing out are students with emotional and behavioral difficulties, primarily emotional. And so continuing to refine and increase the capacity of those programs would be the first place to start in terms of, kind of looking at that differential of bringing down the proportion of dollars spent out of district. It will mean you're spending a few more dollars within district, but that is usually a very cost-effective shift. The standard out-of-district tuition ranges from $60,000 to $120,000, and that's a day program. I mean, if you're talking about a residential program, it's a lot more.
Right, great. Any other comments, Mr. McDevitt? Or
I have a couple of.
My one question I was going to ask is, you said social emotional would be the place to start because that's the highest percentage. Is it also because, and this is going to sound ignorant possibly, it's the easiest to make shifts in the community, or in the school system, or?
So I think what is happening across the Commonwealth and across the country is that the increased social emotional needs of students is just becoming more and more apparent every year. So really it's about being reactive to the changing reality. We have not seen in the last 10 years, we have seen a real growth of students being on IEPs for social emotional needs. And so really it's a reaction to the changing demographics of the kids. And the other thing, the biggest challenge about talking about any of this, and Leanne or Dorsey jump in, is, every kid is different. So you really can't make any, that's an individualized education plan, right? So for us to make any sort of, however, often our students with social emotional needs can access the curriculum at very high levels. It's not, the barrier is not accessing the curriculum, it's being able to be present either physically or mentally in a manner to access the curriculum. So being able to deal with that, it's not about accessing and being successful in the curriculum in general. Now I will tell you that there's 100 stories where what I just said is wrong, and I want to be sensitive to that.
I absolutely agree. It is you look at the data across the district, and I work in several districts, and this is the population that is being placed out at the highest rates all across the state. And it has to do with, what is happening in terms of, well, I have a lot of personal theories, but, in terms of the stresses that particularly middle and high school children are now facing and the way they're managing them. So that's not unique to North Andover at all. I would not argue that it's a particularly easy population. In fact, I think you have to be very sophisticated to have good programs within district, because these are students who are otherwise academically capable often, whose behaviors and whose mental needs make it impossible for them to learn. So creating a good within-district therapeutic program can actually be quite challenging. It's more that it's happening everywhere, but it's the population that seems to be requiring more and more attention. Yeah.
Great. Thanks. Mr. Devin?
A couple of questions. First, this is excellent, so thank you very much. I really appreciate this, and to Mrs. Carbone, the collaboration that certainly happened as well. In the past couple of years, we've really, as you kind of mentioned, we created the partnership with Andover for 18 to 22-year-old students, and we also participate in the CREST program, which is a collaborative of, I don't even know, 13 different communities. So when you start to talk about some of the services that we need to do to try to bring them in-house, is there benefit as we start programs and build them to partner with a neighboring town or community to do that work together? Or do you think there's real value in, based on our population, maybe some of the numbers that we have, that we kind of want to go it alone?
So the answer is both and.
Okay.
I think there is enormous benefit to partnering either with a collaborative or with a neighboring community. The the kind of determining factors usually are, do you have enough of a cohort yourself to create a respectful program? And I use that word very carefully. Because if you are going to create a program, you want to have enough students so that the array of services that those students need and the curriculum that those students need are being delivered in a way that is respectful to their level of need. Historically, districts sometimes partner. They reach out to their collaboratives and say, we have 3 students with this kind of disability and we have a space. Would you like to work with us? Collaboratives are very willing to do that. Okay. If you have sufficient need, then I would say do it in-house. But what you're looking for is that effective and efficient balance. And you always want to assure parents who obviously want the strongest programs for their children that you're presenting programs that represent effective and good practice, and you want to be able to assure the community at large that we're doing this in an efficient way so that the resources that we're using we can justify and we're not taking unnecessary resources. I think both are great options, and it just literally depends on the incidence.
Okay. I'm glad to hear that. I mean, I think some students that I know who travel pretty great lengths on buses, and I can just think, being, an elementary school student or middle, what a portion of the day that is and how that must be miserable. So, we were able to, maybe have a partnership with somebody and it's the next town over or something like that. I mean, it's not in district necessarily, but if it's a small program, we're partnering again with Andover like we do with the 18 to 22-year-olds, the benefit that's there. So I'm really encouraged to hear that, and hopefully we'll have some space and some opportunities to maybe have some of those students come here. One of the other things that I wanted to just ask is, a lot of the goals that are in the document here are really kind of end of year. And I'm sure that there's more kind of, to this, but what incremental goals are there as well? Because one of the things that I would hate to see us do is get to the end of the year and say, oh, we didn't do that, but if we'd known about it in January, we could have changed course, and kind of how that really kind of enables us to make sure that direction is.
So even
focused.
though this looks like it's 1,000,000 words, it's actually a top-level document.
Okay.
And what you would do for any one of those goals as a leadership team would break it down and to say, so if we really are going to develop a plan at the building level around identifying, acknowledging, and holding people accountable for inclusive practice, what are we going to do in September? What are we going to be looking for at the mid-year in terms of what we know about the building and where we have good partnerships and where we don't? What are we going to be doing in June to kind of celebrate the successes and also offer people support who don't have the skills? And that's not in here, but the target dates are simply by the end of next year, we will have some collective data around these kind of oversight plans, these implementation plans, relative to inclusive practice that will help inform the next year's goal setting. It doesn't mean that, you start or you state something in September and then you kind of think about it again in March because the deadline is in
Right. Kind of like setting a goal at work.
or that wonderful goal of I'm going to exercise daily. And then I remember it's 3 weeks and I haven't started yet.
Or 2013.
So, Andrew, just to be clear, Dorsey shared this entire document with our leadership team on Monday, and we didn't share this with you until Monday, until after the leadership team had tweaked it and had bought into it. So this is something that the leadership team across the board bought into. This is not just, Dorsey presenting things. This is something that we all understand. We have to figure it out. So there are some things that are very concrete. Dorsey's going to come and work with our entire leadership team in August at our retreat. We know it's going to happen, and it's going to be around inclusive practice. There's an example, done. But there's some other things that we just don't have that level of specificity yet.
Okay, and that's fair. That's fair. One more question. So one of the last slides that you had actually had a quote, which I thought was, or a statement, I guess, that basically the teachers need to have the support in order for all of the students to I can't speak either, to succeed. So I guess the question is, and I hope that this is not the case, but if they're not getting the support, where do you feel that escalation needs to happen? Does it kind of come back through the special education department? Does it go back through personnel? How does that then happen? I'm just curious your perspective. If you've got a teacher who's got an inclusive classroom and just doesn't feel that they have what they need.
Well, I think special education and general education are kind of the yin and yang of education, and one can't be strong without the other. And my theory is that not only do you collaborate with each other, but you also work within your own kind of administrative structure. I do a lot of training of new administrators, and I talk about communication patterns always being like an H and never like an N or a W, which means if you have a general education teacher who is working with a special education teacher, or who has a teaching assistant, or who has access to some materials or whatever, and it's not working, you encourage that person to work at their level with their teacher, and if it's not working, each person goes to their administrative support, and then it gets handled at that level. So I can tell a very personal story when I was a brand new administrator, which was that I had a special educator who was struggling in a classroom with a science teacher. And so I encouraged her to work with the science teacher, and it wasn't getting any better. So I went to the science department head and said, we need to figure this out. He immediately went to his teacher and said, Mrs. Yearley said you're not doing your job. And I went back to him and I said, if you ever do that to me again, I will lie and say I never said that. So the supports happen, they happen collegially at every level. And so if there is a classroom teacher who's not getting what they need, the building principal needs to be able to work with the special ed administrator at that level, and Mr. Gilligan needs to be able to work with the new administrator of student services, and you stay, it's important for the general education teachers to understand that they have their own people to go to for support, but that those people are working collaboratively.
And the challenge in North Andover is we don't have that level of administrative support on the special education side at this time.
Yeah.
We will have more of it next year.
Yeah.
But we have really been operating that the only support for all those teachers is the principal in the building.
Yeah.
And that becomes a very difficult balancing act when the principal has both of those teachers coming to them rather than an expert in special education support working with that principal. We just haven't had that support.
Okay.
And I'm hopeful with the restructuring, we'll have a lot more of that support there, where the principal can go and say, all right, the science teacher is unhappy, and the special education administrator of the high school can say, yeah, and the special ed teacher, it's not working, and the two of them can work collaboratively. Right now, both of them go to Carla.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that with the addition of the two new administrators, the new director of student services will hopefully, it's not that that person won't be available at the secondary level. They should be, and they will be, and they need to know what's going on, but they may be able to be more available at the elementary level, where there's a good team leader structure now, but those people aren't administrators. So, again, you'd have the kind of shared administrative support, the shared building-based support of general and special ed teachers working together.
Excellent. Thank you.
Mr. Tracy?
Can I just say, before we end this, I would love if the committee would allow, we have some members of the community that are here in NAPAC, and if they have any questions while Ms. Yearley is still here, I think it would be a great opportunity to include them.
It sounds reasonable.
Any questions? Does it look the Gene?
Come on up, right here.
Come join us, right.
Pull up a chair.
So, one of the things that I was looking through the report, I'm not sure if I saw it or whatever, but I'm always the one asking about assistive technology.
Yeah.
And for a few years now, I've been asking and asking, and there's no structure in the system, and there seems to be no training, and the training that has come about doesn't impact the learning curves of the students because the teachers just aren't trained. And even to get the support, because the people that we outsource to are part-time, unavailable. It takes 4 to 6 weeks to get back to you. And in that time, it's very frustrating, not just for the student, the parent, but also for the staff. They don't know where to turn, they don't know where to go. And I didn't see any of that in the report, so I know we were going to hire someone part-time, then it was going to be full-time.
So, very, very good concern. So I think that's one thing that we need to take back is the assisted technology aspect, and make sure that finds its way into the planning.
Right.
Yep.
That is not particularly addressed in here as, you know, an assistive technology need. Clearly, assistive technology is an incredibly powerful tool in helping students with disabilities access to general education. So, you know, one of the things that might happen, and I don't know what your staffing is relative to instructional and assistive technology, but one of the things that might happen when you craft what the needs assessment would be, you know, what do teachers know, what tools do they know, what tools do they need, both in general education and special education, is really to focus on how, you know, where are their skills in terms of assistive technology, and really figure that out. Because, yeah, I know I agree with you that it's very important.
Just you don't know this, Dorsey, but it is a concern, and we did have a position approved, a part-time position for an assistive technology staff member, but we couldn't find one. So that's the problem.
Okay.
Very good.
So maybe you could combine it with something else, is what I was going to
Right.
Well, I know that
create
like,
a full-time position by finding, you know.
in other districts, one of the things that they do is they'll send some of the teachers' assistants out and let them become the experts, and then they can come back in and fan out and you know, do what they have to do. Whatever you have to do it. $12,000 for a teacher's assistant is a heck of a lot cheaper than outsourcing a lot of some of this stuff.
Yeah, I think these are good concerns that I'm sure when the administration has their retreat in the summer and puts flesh on the bone, I think we could get a report out at some point to see how this is going to manifest itself as a strategic update. And what I would recommend is, can we continue the conversation on where you see, now that we've seen the plan and the strategic goals, can we look at the other areas you know, offline, and perhaps make sure that those get addressed either as part of the flesh out or you know, as a to-do. Is that reasonable?
One of the other, this is just a comment. I understand that, you know, that there's a rising volume of complex childhood trauma coming, and I totally understand that, and I'm fully on board on having it in-house. I think that's a great idea. The one thing that troubles me that I didn't hear, and I'm sure that it's been talked about, but a lot of the IEPs read like beautiful books, but the implementation of them are not up to par, and that's why a lot of these placements are going out, because people aren't getting what they need. So that's all I want to say.
Thank you very much for your input. Thank you. Mr. Treese, was there any comment before we move on? Great. Again, thank you very much for...
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Thank you very much.
I'm here fairly frequently, and I enjoy it every time. I think it's a wonderful district.
Leanne, I just wanted to thank you personally for all the great work you've done. We may or may not get to see you before you retire. Hopefully we will.
Thank you,
But,
Steve.
you know, you stepped in under sort of some tough circumstances and have been a great support for us. So thank you so much.
Thank you, I really appreciate the kind words.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have an update on the Royal Crest After School Club. Is that,
Yeah,
Yes.
so we'd like to introduce, this is Christy Forrest, and this is one of our outreach programs that we have in the community. We talked earlier in the year about Woodridge, a before-school program at the middle school, some activities at the Thompson, et cetera. But Christy's going to talk about some of the really good work. She's a Merrimack College Community Engagement Fellow, and she's done a great job. She's going to get into it, but really managing the service, the undergrads, service volunteers from Merrimack that have helped out over there with the Homework Club. So, Christy Forrest.
Thanks, Gilly.
welcome.
Good evening. As Gilly just said, I'm Christy Forrest, this year's Merrimack College Community Engagement Graduate Fellow. So thank you for having me and allowing me to share with you the work that I've been involved in over the course of this past year in this partnership between North Andover Public Schools and Merrimack College. The intention of this continued relationship between NAPS and Merrimack has been to combine each partner's resources, and its development over the previous years has brought focus onto impacted community and parent engagement due to research-backed evidence showing family engagement in their child's academics is the most indicative factor in addressing student achievement gaps. Excuse me. Sorry. So now we have the Royal Crest Knights and Warriors. Here we are.
Wow.
One way that we are exercising this practice is through the idea of the after-school program, which is used by districts to supplement students' learning and overall education. However, this idea was taken a step further by adding an innovative twist. By bringing the after-school program closer to the students, we now have this program. The idea to create this program at the Royal Crest Complex originated with Dr. Price and was then assigned to me to develop and direct. Her statement was, my hope through this program was to bring the resources to where the kids live and to provide them more learning opportunities. The results so far exceeded her expectations. The Royal Crest Knights and Warriors program is an after-school program meant to serve our Title I Atkinson Elementary School families. The purpose is to provide tutoring and mentoring for our Atkinson students and to increase community and parent engagement. Family engagement is any way that a child's adult caretakers effectively support learning and healthy development. The program runs 3 days per week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, from 3:15 to 6 p.m. And the focus on Mondays and Wednesdays is academic enrichment and homework. And our focus on Fridays is socializing and mentoring. So in the beginning, I just wanted to explain that in the beginning, what I did with the help of Principal Landry and Alicia Murray, actually, the strategy was to just start by filtering through Power Schools database who lives at Royal Crest. I then sent out a survey to gauge interest, and approximately, 23 out of 70 families responded with interest. So I then sent those 23 families formal registration paperwork and invited everybody to show up on November 9th, 2015, when we just opened our doors and held our fingers crossed. We currently serve 13 first through fifth graders. So again, exercise and collaboration. By partnering with Royal Crest Estates for its location purposes, and the Merrimack College for its volunteer resource, NAPS intended to reach our students and families in a more comprehensive way by bringing school closer to home. Using an asset-based approach and offering this after-school academic and social enrichment in a less intimidating space, families feel more comfortable in interacting with the school. The outcome has been by bringing together Merrimack students, Atkinson students, and the Royal Crest management, we have established capacity and successfully built a effective three-way community partnership. Some of the program's strengths are, of course, number one is access. By being held right in the student's backyard, Royal Crest has provided a comfortable space and allowed for the connection with the students and parents on a regular basis. Here we are able to build positive rapport and mutually beneficial interpersonal relationships. Reciprocity of the partners is also a big strength. The pairing of elementary school students with the college students has worked very well. The elementary school students build relationships with and bond with the college students very quickly. The children are more at ease with college volunteers, so generally they ask a lot of questions in the program that they normally would not ask in school. With that one-to-one is very helpful. The children also gain the opportunity to see college students that are representative of themselves, making the potentiality of college in their own future more tangible. The college students in return gain valuable work experience. Faculty support has been tremendous. All the games, supplies, material used was donated from Atkinson faculty and staff, which has been a massive bonus. In particular, Marion Mako provided me with all 20 plus something games. Without their contribution, obtaining these resources would have been much more difficult. Learning additional program outcomes are that it has allowed the children to learn more than just study habits and academic enrichment. It's a space where we are able to enforce raised values, the NAP's mission, and while also addressing such topics as personal space and boundaries and appreciation of difference. Some of the challenges, I'm sorry.
Nice, that's great.
Thanks. Challenges, courses, always lack of funding. The program is entirely volunteer-run with no budget. This was challenging when organizing such events as pizza and movie nights. All funds contributed were expensed to my personal account. Volunteer base consistency. Coordinating with Merrimack Service Learning Department early on in each semester is ideal. Get yourself set up to have about a consistent 4 to 7 volunteers for the full 9 hours a week. Also planning for alternative volunteer options for staff during college breaks and vacations to ensure the program can still run its normally scheduled programming. During the college's winter break, we had to close down the program, which interrupted the momentum that we had kind of gained with the Atkinson students. Also space requirements. Within the clubhouse, I've kind of come to the conclusion that the space restricts us to serving about 10 elementary school students max, when we could truly really be serving more. There's more of a need. Storage cabinets for the material with a lock on it would also have been ideal. We unfortunately did have some stuff taken from our supply, so that was disappointing. And as far as efficiency, many of the students we serve have learning challenges that my volunteers or myself are not specifically trained to teach or to help them with. Having a professional once a week would have been a major contribution. And the worst part is we have also become a babysitter for some families, which is in direct contrast to our goal of increasing parent engagement, not decreasing parent engagement. And sustainability. We need to gain long-term support and backing from NAPS to continue this momentum that we've established. And we're always looking for new connections to resources. Some of the parent feedback that I have received, one is that my child was able to get expert guidance from the mentor and plan their regular home-based work in a play and learn way. Parents are made part of the program, and my wife always attended the program and is able to make the children follow the good takes of the program while children are at home. My child has had the opportunity to socialize with more children who attend the Atkinson School. It has made her feel more comfortable at school now that she has more friends who also live at the Royal Crest apartment complex. Some of the student voices. I like everything about the program, especially in talking English better because I am from another country. My favorite thing about the Royal Crest Knights and Warriors program is that I'm able to improve my reading skills. This makes reading easier and more fun. My favorite thing about the program is that we receive help with our homework and the talent show we got to make on Fridays. I want the program to continue because if it was not here, I would be home alone after school and not get any help with my, excuse me, my homework. So how can we continue to serve these parents and children? Sorry, I'm all over the place now.
The next slide is recommendations.
There we go.
Let's see, get it again, come on.
Okay, excuse me. Recommendations for the future. Obviously, to continue practicing increasing family engagement. Students with engaged families earn higher grades and test scores, enroll in higher level programs, adapt better to schools, exhibit higher attendance rates, have better social skills and behaviors, and have higher graduation rates and post-secondary success. Adding new initiatives such as holding how-to workshops in the clubhouse for parents on off days of the program. For example, why reading at home is important, exercises on how to do so, along with tips exploring other subjects, math, science, and social studies. And always making an effort to include the entire family. Making the enrollment to the program a pact between parents and Royal Crest Knights and Warriors students. For example, maybe if the child comes to the program, having their parent, having their parent attend at least one parent workshop per month to show that they are engaged and included. Continue to work the liaison role by inviting parents of the Royal Crest Knights and Warriors to attend school events by ensuring them that that person will be a familiar face and an advocate for them. Going forward, in keeping with the NAP's mission to cultivate respectful, community-engaged learners, insightful thinkers, and effective communicators, excuse me, and in alignment with Ray's values, our mission to enlighten minds, engage hearts, and empower lives is matched up quite nicely. The program has gotten a lot of well-received press and holds a lot of promise. The community and everyone that hears about it thinks it's a really great idea. We have even been featured on the Merrimack website under the following link and title: Graduate Fellow Student Starts Tutorial Program for Elementary Students. We have even been visited by a local celebrity. Thank you.
Before you ask me questions, I just want to say that, you know, like any pilot program, you always need somebody who's going to keep it going. And Chrissy definitely did that. You got a sense of that during the presentation. Yeah. But whether it was being the only one available to man that night, but making sure that it was there every night that it was supposed to be there, or making sure that the kids had something to eat, or having pizza for the group, rallying more volunteers. She did a great job keeping it going, and as you could tell from the quotes, it made a difference for some of our kids.
That's great.
It was my pleasure.
Jim, could I just add one thing?
That's the chair.
Please, Mr. Gilligan. I'll tell you, so when the Woodridge program started with a tutor from NAPS and partnered up with Tracy Watson and their recreation coordinator for after school, this, Christy really started to have some ideas around this, and it really took off. And for a program with no budget, and her being our fellow, the work that she did, she mentioned somewhere in there that there was, some vacation nights that she had. Well, there's also a couple vacation nights that she went and opened the program.
Oh, yeah.
So she went above and beyond. She's going to be fabulous in this world, and something that's going to help kids and families. I'm not sure quite what it's going to be yet, but we were really lucky to have her, and we were really lucky to get a grad student that's had quite a bit of life experience as well. Mm-hmm. That made all the difference, and we're really going to miss her. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate everything you do for our kids.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity you provided me. It's been transformational for sure.
Okay. A couple of quick questions. How many other students participated as volunteers?
As volunteers?
I'm sorry, Merrimack students.
In the first semester, it was interesting, the difference in semesters, probably just due to class structuring, the way they run the fall separately from the spring. In the fall, I had like a lot more consistent, those regular 9-hour-a-week students. I had 4 solids and about 2 who were solid either every other week or did like 5 hours. It was like a split. Mm-hmm. And then in the spring semester, after we came back from break, that was another kind of just a shock. I didn't expect it to be that difficult. I had 22 Merrimack's volunteers sign up, but I couldn't use them all. And some of them only needed like 3 to 5 hours, and some of them only needed 15 hours. So it's been it's been very fluctuating.
When you say they need it, what do you mean by they need it?
Merrimack College is an Augustinian college, and so their philosophy is service.
Yep.
So all students are required to do some amount of service inside the community. So I had a flyer, and I sent it to, I don't know, almost every faculty professor I could get an email of, saying, if you ever have students who need to do projects, assignments, hours. I worked very closely with Mary McHugh at the Service Learning Center over there.
She's awesome.
She supplied me with my consistent volunteers in the fall, which I hoped and expected would happen in the spring that didn't. So I do have one student who is doing his internship with me. Other than that, I have some regulars, but they are not full 9 hours. So, but it's interesting, the students at Atkinson, it's the first time. It's, Monday Sean comes, Wednesday where's Sean? What do you mean he's not
So
coming
you just
back?
put up flyers to find, identify, and select these people?
We have what's called, they call it like a WhatsApp email that
Yeah.
goes out to, it's like an email blast that goes out to every student. So I got a flyer attached to that email.
Yep.
So that will go out every single week, all year long. And yeah, I word of mouth, hit the ground running.
So how does this
promoted.
continue next year?
You tell me.
We're working on that. I mean, we've already started talking about how we're going to do that.
Do we, or does Merrimack College query these people?
I believe they do.
We would have to.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sure, I know we have to. Is it being done?
Yeah.
Yeah?
As a
Please.
Joy O'Connor, a teacher at the Atkinson, this program makes a big difference. The kids come back and they feel as if they're part of something deeper. So thank you very much for all you've done this year. Makes a difference when they have to come back and do writers' workshops. They have something to talk about. They have something to write about. So
Great.
Thank you.
It sounds like something we're going to want to try to sustain.
Oh, we are definitely going to sustain it.
Perhaps remove some of the
Okay.
rough edges. I mean, sometimes the pilot has to fly an aircraft that.
I, of course,
maybe
would love to see it go. I mean, I know it was Dr. Price's idea, but it's sort of been my baby.
Well, thank you. We hope to bring your
Thank
baby
you,
up.
Christy.
Thank you very
Thanks
much for
again.
having me.
You can see a connection to the whole FIT money eventually going into the community.
Yes, it will.
Right through that.
Absolutely.
Great. Okay.
Sorry for the nerves.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christy.
Thanks, Jim.
The last item of new business that we need to cover, and I know we're running a little long, is the superintendent evaluation process.
So I'm happy to walk you through it. So if you look at the evaluation process timeline, Mr. Gross and Mr. McDevitt and I had talked about trying to do an end-of-cycle summative by June 2nd. So working back, our timeline is very tight. It would mean that I would have an end-of-cycle progress report to you by next Friday. It's not really end of cycle, so some of the stuff I'll do my best, but for instance, evaluations, which is one of my goals, those aren't due until June 15th, and I can tell you I don't have them done at this point a month and 6 weeks ahead of time. But I do have all the mid-cycle, so you can see I'm making progress. So we're going to do our best. At the May 12th school committee meeting, what we would do is have the opportunity for you to ask me questions about any of the evidence I presented, et cetera, with the goal of you guys reporting, providing Mr. Gross a report by May 20th. And the report, just so you know, we can go and look at that, is an assessment on my progress of goals. The actual template here, by the way, is behind a rating of my performance on each standard and an overall rating on my performance. One of the things that I think is going to be very hard is a rating on the superintendent's impact on student learning gains. I've been here 8 months. It's very hard for us to articulate that, so I think some sort of decision, probably about, some statement that, we're hopeful that the superintendent's having a positive impact on learning, but we will be able to better know that as we have more data. So just something for you to think about as a community, because I think it's hard to do that authentically. And then the school committee drafts the end of cycle evaluation report and compiles that using your reports and prepares a single summative that then is sent to you by May 30th and then is presented to me on June 2nd.
So this is going to require, I think, everybody to do the needful and have the evaluation formatted into the templates pretty quickly.
What's the rush to the June 2nd deadline?
So, well, the rush to June 2nd is, we only have one other meeting, which is June 16th, which is when you're going to be reconstituting the board. So the question is, do we want to do my evaluation at the same time you're reconstituting the board on June 16th?
Well, I don't know how that's relevant to reconstituting the board, but I guess my point is, I feel like this is this is just a general comment, but it seems like you have a lot of important things to do. And you sound like you're not going to be able to get done what you want to get done for this.
No,
So
I
why-
can get done. I just won't be able to report on everything because it's
Yeah.
not done.
So what's June 2nd so important besides that we're meeting them? I mean, if we took this up in July sometime, I mean,
Well, we
what's
need
the...
to have salary action defined before the end of the year.
So
okay.
So
Well,
part of the
this is reason why.
evaluation
Okay.
feeds into an executive session about
Her compensation.
compensation package, correct. And I'd like to have that before the 1st of July. So this
Which is
kinda-
when my compensation for this year is over. And then the other thing is you have to report to the state by July 15th overall performance ratings for me. So that we can't go much farther than July 15th. So the question is, it's June 2nd or June 16th. It just gets hard, I think, in the first year because we don't, we haven't done a full cycle.
I agree.
Yeah.
Right? And Bev and I are working pretty hard on this. We believe we can get you what you need. May 6th, we did a lot of it for my mid-cycle, so there's not a ton more we have to do. But it is a bit of an aggressive timeline. I agree, Mr. Tracy.
Yeah, it's just one of those frustrating parts about what we have to do to please the people down in Malden. I mean, if you get to it, great, but I mean, if there's bigger fish to fry, please fry them.
Okay. One part of my evaluation that we had agreed on is actually a survey that I plan to send out. And there were 3 areas that we had agreed. This is not, the do you like her, do you think her clothing is appropriate, I mean, that kind of survey. But we had agreed on 3 areas. One was communication, the other was visibility, and the third was vision. So I've asked a series of questions. I think they're pretty simple. This survey would take about a minute for you to do. And it's basically, if you're a parent, you got one set of questions. If you're a kid, you got another, So for instance, the parent, I've met the superintendent, yes or no? My child reports that the student has seen the student at his or her school. If you're a faculty member, I've met the superintendent. How many times have you seen the superintendent in your school, and has the superintendent visited your classroom or office space? And then in terms of communication, have you received my communication? Okay, this is going to be a biased group because I don't know how they're going to receive the survey if they don't receive my communication, but that's another issue. But then have you found my communication to be relevant and timely? And then the last is, here are the 4 areas we have developed as areas of focus. Did we get it right? And can you rank these for me? And that's just useful for me as our team goes into really developing the vision, getting some sense from the community, what do you think is most important for us to focus our time and energy on, and what is most urgent? There's also opportunities for people to talk about communication and visibility and vision, so if people want to say more, they can, but I wanted a survey that was quick and easy for people to take. And focused. This is very focused on what we had agreed we would do a survey on.
Well, this is already more communication exposure that parents would have with you than they've had in my 8 years as a parent of a student in school. So just the fact that this would even go out will be very exciting for people, I think.
I just want to make sure that I got the questions right from you guys, your guys' perspective, because it's tying into, you probably don't remember my goals, but goal 1 and goal 5, which was communication and then visibility.
Yep.
Okay. And let me propose that if we do find ourselves in a jam where some of the to-dos haven't been done yet, then we don't have enough evidence to evaluate that criteria. And I think that's an acceptable
We just state that then.
piece of feedback that I can't hate on this because the evidence is not here yet.
Evaluations aren't done.
Exactly.
Whatever.
Right.
So, I think if there's a incremental notation like that, you completed mid-year ones. I mean, that 3 have been delivered, and I don't know what the number is, but if there's any of that, then I think that's a fair notation.
So, sorry.
No, I just want to ask you a question. In the past, for the indicators, Frank, we have highlighted one typically in which category, not done them all. I mean, we can do them all, but typically I was thinking about this, I was thinking, I don't recall we didn't think about this. I remember we used to do that, and we start at the beginning, or I just don't remember. Did we do that? What did we do?
That's a good point. I'll have to.
Can we go back and see if we can
Yeah.
look for that?
I thought we identified what we thought were the key indicators for the first year that we wanted to focus on.
I sort of probably did.
We identified my goals, but we didn't ever in the fall talk about key indicators to focus on.
Okay.
I mean, you could at this point talk about that.
Okay.
I think we have to put a rating on all of them.
I don't think we did all of
This,
them
yeah,
in the
this
past.
is really, we followed Mr. Teresa's guidelines.
Okay, fine.
Let's call it the Mullen Rule. We decided not to do that. We didn't.
So all you have to report to the state is an overall
Right.
on each of the 4 standards.
Correct. And we did do that,
And we
right?
picked some of the standards
Yes.
that we thought were most important, so we
Right,
didn't
right.
do them all.
Right.
Agreed.
But I would be curious, and I don't know how easy or difficult this may be, but I remember last year having to compile the information.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if it may be beneficial if this were loaded onto Google Docs, and then we were each able to access it and add our comments directly there, which I think would make life for the chair a little bit easier.
Whatever. I mean, I
Yeah,
think.
if I can, if we set the Wayback Machine to the beginning of the year, and if we did not identify the specific elements that we thought as a committee were the important indicators, then what I think we should do is allow each committee member to rate on the full array of indicators, and we'll just, compile that with, one evaluation here, 2 evaluations there, et cetera, rather than a priori go back and say, well, let's evaluate her here, here, and here, because that's kind of like,
Very
it may be,
Okay, so but the issue we've had in years past is, Mr. McDevitt and Mr. Rossi both know, is how do we rate something we don't feel like we have any information about?
So that would be my suggestion on May 12th. I will present the information that'll be mostly focused on the 5 goals that we agreed to. If during this, so this is how I've done it with my employees in the past, so for instance, there's stuff in here that I think you can rate very easily. Data-informed decision-making. You're going to have a view on whether or not I use data-informed decision-making. You're probably not going to need me to report that to you at all. You might have a little bit more of a question on something else. So what it might be helpful for us to do is on the 12th say, hey, Jen, we really don't feel like we can rate you on well, hopefully some of this. I'm trying to figure out sharing responsibility. Do I collaborate with families and community stakeholders? You may be able to or may not to, but then I might be able to provide some data for you on some of these focused indicators that you feel you don't have information on.
Right.
But that's what I've done with my employees in the past, is basically say, I don't really feel like, so let's talk about that. Jen, do you feel like you're, culturally proficient? And I might say, well, come to my NAPRAN event on about Claude Steele's Whistling Vivaldi, and you'll see me talk about race and class and differences in a sensitive way, and that might be a way for you to get some data.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
What I always have to remind myself.
I'm just saying.
Other than having the document that we send to Mullen, other than that, right?
Right.
It's for us to try to help you. Right. This is supposed to be a helpful thing.
Right.
So you know what we're thinking, and you can adjust your behavior accordingly.
Right.
It's sort of neutral.
Wow.
Just saying, right?
Supposed to be helpful.
So with that as a backdrop.
Our feelings to a little box.
But that would be my suggestion on May 12th. If you guys can spend some time between now and then and say, hey, Jen, we really need some information on X, Y, and Z.
And when we go through it, or when I would go through it, I would try to identify the specific indicators where I go, I've got no clue on that. Can you help me out, right? So they're out of the 17 that we have.
So let me propose.
There's one here, 2D, law, ethics, and policies, right? Okay, sure, whatever.
I think you might be able to talk about that.
Okay.
Have I, and I might get a needs improvement on that one. Have I complied with all state and federal laws, school committee policies? And collective bargaining, so that you might have some sense of that.
But again, it's, we would need, I just have to find some piece of evidence that would say, yeah, she did that, check that.
So let's first play the Wayback Machine and see if we identify those, because I thought we had that, and I might be getting some.
Might be crossing years.
I do not think we did that this year. I think I would have remembered that.
If we haven't, please when she makes her May 12th report, please review that, and if you are in need of additional information in areas that you feel is important to evaluate and you don't have evidence, let's bring that to the discussion. And I just want a consensus that we can meet the schedule, or do we need another meeting in July or June?
Well, I would say let's start, and then when we get further down the road, if it looks like we're not even getting close, then we can kick the can into July.
I guess my frustration is, like, if we need more evidence, I feel like, well, if we need more evidence, we're going to go ask one of these guys to get us evidence so we can write a report for it. It seems like make work for something that I think we all have a good feeling about how things are going right now.
I don't disagree, but this is one of the three legislative responsibilities this board has.
I understand.
You understand how this?
Yeah.
When this fell in our lap a few years ago, we were like,
But isn't there a workshop on how to do this coming up? So
Yeah,
that's
actually,
one
there is.
thing that it might be helpful for you.
It's just a full Saturday. So I nominate, yes.
One practical thing, could Deb send us pages 2, 3, and 4 of Appendix H? Would be helpful.
They're all linked in the document.
Okay. I would also, yes, in 2, 3, and 4, she absolutely can, but what it is my goals. It's actually the goals that we adopted.
Okay.
So if you remember, Appendix H it's this, which I think is important for you to know, that what is considered the right ratings for new superintendents. But pages 2, 3, and 4 were the 4 goals that when we worked with Carla Bear that we used to develop my 5 goals. So it's stuff you've seen before.
It's also on the entry.
So we use the state's 4 goals recommended for new superintendents to create my goals, and then added the 5th of visibility.
Okay.
So all that is 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
And we made some tweaks in the language, so that's why I didn't put it, because it's not the exact goals that I adopted.
Okay, well then that makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep, so
that-
you should be getting stuff from us soon. We'll do our best.
Great. What I'd like to do is circle back to old business and try to clean up. I don't think these will take too long, but I would like to get through this. We have a second reading of 2016-2017 school choice, and this is required both by law. We had our our public hearing on this. There was no comment. The superintendent had shared with us, and as did the rest of the administration, that traditionally we do not allow or do not vote in for open school participation for reasons that we are busting at the seams, and we can't regulate, or we can't throttle who would come. So as a result, the recommendation is a no vote. So I'll take entertain a motion to vote no for participation in receiving school district choice for 2016-17.
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, I gave a large preamble. Any discussion?
Yeah.
A little out of order, sorry.
There might be a question.
Is it none?
None. Great, so all in favor of voting not to participate in receiving school district choice for 2016-17, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? 5-0, thank you. Next item is a reading of appointment to Crest Board of Directors. So I'll take a motion to appoint our current school committee representative, Mr. Limpert, to the Crest Collaborative for 2017.
Second.
Okay, Mr. Limpert, any discussion? Very good. So all in favor of Mr. Limpert as our school committee appointee to represent North Andover School District on Crest Collaborative for 2017, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All abstained? Great, 5-0. Now, the next item, I think we're going to need to do just a little bit of discussion on. This is basically, although it's written as the second reading of the naming, it's really the second reading of the policy change that would enable the naming, given that our current policy does not permit the motion by Mr. Limpert as a naming. So what I'd like to do is, since this is second reading, I'd open open for a motion to accept the school naming facilities process FF as amended, and we can at least have conversation over that once the motion is made and seconded.
Move to accept the policy as amended.
Is there a second? Again, we would need a second to discuss the policy changes, not to accept it, just to discuss it.
So moved.
Okay.
Second, sorry.
So we have a motion and a second. So now let's have conversation about the proposed modifications to our school naming of facilities, policy FF and FFR.
My sort of initial reaction to this is, when we start down these paths, it always seems simple when we get started, and then as we get down, it gets kind of more complicated all the time. So I looked at these changes, I'm thinking, well, gee, what about this and what about that? I don't know. It just seems like we might need to think about this a little bit more. I mean, we're getting close, I think, but do you think? What do you think? We're close enough on this?
So we definitely need to do something to create the exemption 5 for the naming of the Hall of Fame, Educator Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be in direct...
that's clear.
That has to be done, I think.
Yeah.
The rest of the modifications, and again, I know Mr. McDevitt did a yeoman's job for providing that framework so that we could do something very important for the community. This broadens the application for naming. This gives the school committee a little more leeway in adding or accepting nominations outside of the original framework. I don't see any major issue with that, but I think that there will be, there'll be potentially hidden impact.
So let me just throw out a couple of different things, and I think I'm going to probably go a little out of chronological order in this. Number 5 I added really just to be sure that we had the exemption for the Educator Hall of Fame. I wasn't sure if there was a policy on it. I didn't find one. It's just kind of something that we do, but there is no true policy with that. And
on the Educator Hall.
On the Educator Hall of Fame. So there's nothing in our, so that kind of middle or second sentence or so can be removed out there. But I think that allows us to have that classroom be named with an agreement upon it by the recipient, the building principal, and the superintendent of schools. So I put that in there. The other 2 pieces on policy FFR that are kind of redlined, if you will, in the case where there is no principal or PTO or involved, the recommendation would be presented to the superintendent, who will forward it to the school committee. I think that that's fine. I have no issue with that. I think the second bullet that's there, which I'll kind of add on to the, or I'll just read the entire sentence. A recommendation in memory of an individual or event will not be considered for a period of at least 5 years after the passing/event. And this is a part that's redlined, except under special circumstances and approved by the school committee. I didn't add that. I think you did, Mr. Limper. I would actually recommend that we remove that. I think if we put that in there, then we run the risk, which we did not want to do, of the knee-jerk reaction to something. And I think if we are going to make an exception to that, then we have to vote to suspend the policy in order to do that. Otherwise, I think what will happen, unfortunately, is there is an event or something that happens in the community, and we decide we are going to rename something, or we're going to dedicate something in honor or memory of somebody within the community. And I don't think that was the intention that we had a year ago.
Right, and I think I think that's what it came out in our discussion, the first discussion we had, and I certainly agree with that. I don't have any problem removing that language per se, to sort of have a waiting period or something. I think that's a good idea.
Okay. So in order to do something, I think we would have to suspend the rules in order to do that.
That would be the requirement.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then to go back to policy FF, I don't necessarily have a problem with the red line section. It may be appropriate to name a part of a building or facility for an individual who's made a significant contribution or has had a significant impact on the school system. Individuals could include teachers, administrators, staff, and students. A naming of part of a school should follow a procedure similar to that used for naming of a school. I guess the question that I have with that being in there is, I feel like that's already covered.
FFR.
Yeah, I think that in order to get to, any form of naming, as Dr. Price said, you kind of then have to look at policy FFR, and I think that covers it. So I'm not sure that that's necessary.
It has just seemed to me that in past discussions we seem to have raised that question among ourselves about Now, how do we do this if it's not the whole school? It just seems like that question come up. It's not a problem if you think it's covering something.
Well, it's within FFR existing facilities.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm okay. I mean, less is not, more is not necessarily better.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the second section or the second original paragraph that was there. You know, the superintendent will prepare for the approval of the committee a procedure to follow in the recommending names for a school, facility, or portion thereof. Again, I think it's maybe a little bit repetitive because I think we added the section in there for existing facilities, but I don't think it contradicts anything.
Everything I've heard makes perfect sense. Are there any other concerns or opinions on what's been proposed?
Just from historical, just so I understand that Part 5, Section 5, we're going to be naming retroactively for the award winners classrooms? Is that what's happening?
They are already.
That's what we've been doing. We just don't have any policy.
I've seen the plaque. Okay, got it.
Yeah,
Okay,
it just never has been covered
Written out, okay.
technically in the
We
policy.
used this policy last year. That was kind of a conflict that we created.
Right.
Because we never had a policy. So now we
Got
have a
it.
policy, and that previous historical activity is now in conflict, so we want to exclude that specifically.
Perfectly, okay. And then what about if there are any corrections to language that need to be made here? Can we fix that afterward?
If it's substantive, I would recommend you bring it forward.
Well, I just don't understand the sentence that says, the naming of an area, room, addition, or field within an existing school's facility will use through the following procedures. I don't understand the will use through the following
Where are you right
procedures
now?
part. Sorry.
Where are you?
FFR, halfway down the left-hand page, under existing facilities.
Will
That
use,
second sentence, will use through the following procedures.
should be, will use the following procedures, I would assume.
Just take out through, okay.
Yep.
Word through needs to be stricken.
Okay.
Grammatically incorrect.
Yeah, sorry, I know that's
No,
a
good,
pain.
good.
And then one other place, the first red right below that,
Mhm.
in the case of where you can either leave there is no principal or PTO involved, take out the R, or take out the there is and leave the R, but you can't have both. In my opinion, it doesn't make any sense.
Yes, we can change the grammar. Mrs. Agari will do an excellent job in consultation with our grammar expert, Miss Parent.
So let me.
His parents smile.
Mr. Tracy, do you have any input or suggestions?
No, not really. I mean, no matter how much we wordsmith this, there's going to be something that's going to pop up, and that's always the case. I think when I raised this issue a few weeks ago, it was just being consistent through the process we went through from naming the track to naming the resource room. So that was my biggest concern. But and I commend Mr. McDevitt for the effort he's put into this, and it's still never going to get right. But
So let me try to run through the proposed edits and then see if we can have a motion to accept with those modifications. So what I'm hearing is strike from FF the entire new paragraph in red, keep the or a portion thereof, and in FFR, the grammatical correction in existing facilities first line, the grammatical correction in the first red area, principal or PTO, and then strike the second red line under section 1 indicating except under circumstances, that entire statement. And then finally in section 5, clean up the is there a policy for this question? Yeah. It turns out there isn't one.
It was kind of a question of Bev.
Yeah, understood. And I think that
She wrote back to you.
that would be the proposal to approve this this policy or these policies with those modifications. Is there a motion to do that, or do you want to see it one more time before we close out on this topic?
I think I'm okay with the correction.
Yeah, I'm okay.
So is there a motion to accept as described?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on the motion to accept as described? So let's vote on the modifications. All in favor of the modifications as described, say aye. Aye. All opposed? No abstentions? Great. Now let's vote on the policy change. So all in favor of accepting the policy change with the modifications we just accepted, say aye. Aye. All opposed? None abstained? Thank you. So with that as backdrop, Mr.
Process is a
Lippert,
process.
the process indicates that the proposal is not yet eligible for policy unless you wish to make a motion to waive waive the policy. Okay.
The first action with the policy is not to make.
Not to make the motion. Okay.
Maybe executive policy, right?
All right. Thank you very much. We got through that complex policy step. That leaves us with a budget update. I'm sorry?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman. One second. So where do we stand with naming the resource room?
He's removed the
that
proposal. It's no longer fits under the policy because it hasn't been 5 years.
So can I make a motion to suspend the policy to name the collaborative room in honor of Dr. Hutchinson?
So there's a motion to suspend policy.
No. Let's think about what the language
Suspend the policy such that the proposal can be reintroduced.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Is there a second to motion to suspend the policy? I'm not hearing a second.
Okay.
So I think the intent is to let the events occur 5 years, and we'll bring it forward. Thank you for making that motion.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Now, moving on. I guess we're on the budget status update.
Yep, this will be quick.
Very quick.
As I've expressed, we've had some difficulties with the transition to Munis, and one of the things that's recently happened, it's not major, but the encumbrances didn't reduce the last time we did our payroll.
Oh.
So what would have happened is if I had generated the budget status report, it would have had inflated numbers. We're still tracking the same way we've been tracking, so I would like to move this to the next meeting. We'll have a budget update then. We've been working. They actually sent me something just before this meeting for me to look through and to make sure that things are now functioning correctly. So I think we're online, but I wouldn't have been able to generate an accurate report for this one.
System hiccup or something like that?
Yeah, well, basically in this case, what's happened is there are 3 places where you can change information, and if you don't change them in one particular place, it will override those changes that you made. So going forward, we know that, but we didn't know it then.
I would just like to, because I see this on a daily basis, I would really like to thank Jim and Tracy and Lucy and Don Pendleton and Lynn Savage, who have worked hours that they are in no way being compensated for. They're here till 10 at night sometimes, trying to get this conversion done. And so I just want to be very clear, it is not a lack of effort in any way that we are not getting what we need. It really, this system, Town Manager Mailer has agreed that what we actually, we purchased a web-based Munis product, and we're actually going to get rid of that and go to a desktop-based Munis product, because the web-based product has really created incredible challenges, and each payroll has been a yeoman's effort, as corrections that were made one payroll are not translating to the next payroll. And so I just want to make it clear that this is not an effort issue in any way. We think we've gotten to the bottom of it. And with all due respect, I've heard that before, as we continue to pull the string here. So is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair.
So thank you.
Thank you very much as well. But is there any recourse that we have on the vendor to hold them accountable to the extra effort and money that we've got to
So
spend?
Lynn has been doing Lynn Savage has been doing a real huge job trying to get the vendor to make sure that they're living up to their end of the deal. They were here today working with us. It's really about them providing man hours to help us get through this. And I think we've squeezed as much as we're going to. But I would ask you to answer. Am I correct in that?
That's correct, yeah. And as far as compensating us for the hours that we've put in, I don't see that happening.
As long as
I'm sorry, this is a fee-for-service relationship, software as a service relationship?
It includes a certain amount of time for the transition, the implementation, and then we pay for ongoing maintenance and service, yes.
Yeah, so if the application is not meeting its specifications, I propose that we shouldn't be paying for that month of service or those months of service, but I'll defer to you and hopefully town council to see
it's Andrew.
How to pursue that, if it's something that we can get some relief on.
It's been very hard.
It's been difficult for us as well. I mean, I know you've been trying diligently since the crossover to help us understand where we are financially, and it's just very difficult to operate as a service to the town if we have no altimeter on the airplane. This just doesn't make sense.
Right.
So thank you very much for your extra effort.
Can I ask you a quick question? So with a lot of software companies, there's like a user network or forum. Are there other communities that are having similar issues?
Interestingly enough, it's pretty prevalent across the state. No, I'm saying Munis is prevalent.
Right.
Okay.
And Michelle
Waiting for you to finish that.
McHugh, Michelle McHugh attended a user conference yesterday. Lynn had booked a slot along with somebody else from the town, but they were working on this, so they couldn't go, and Michelle went with somebody else. But when she came back, she said that a lot of people expressed how much they liked the system. So no, we're not hearing that they're experiencing the same problems.
But we are one of the few towns that is using this web-based product. So, and that was a recommendation of the previous IT director on the town side. And so the feeling is that that was probably not the best recommendation, and we need to go back to using what the most of the cities and towns are using in Massachusetts.
Right. What was unforeseen is if they made a change to accommodate another community, it's changed ours as well.
Welcome to the cloud. So can I ask that we get at least a distributed update as soon as you have one that's credible, and ideally before town meeting? Is that rational, given our our next meeting is after town meeting?
Yes, it'll be done.
Okay. That would be great. That would be helpful. So thank you for the budget update.
We're sorry.
Next item, request for vote of support for Alice. Dr. Price, you want to walk us through this?
Yeah, so we made, on last meeting, we had, the April 7th meeting, we had an Alice presentation, and as we move forward, I don't really think you have to support this, but I was just going to ask if the school committee would be supportive of us moving to a K-12 adoption of Alice, so that as we go forward and roll this out with parents, having school committee approval, I think, would be very important to us. So
moved.
Second. And so some discussion.
Well, we had a great presentation last time. I thought Officer Caffrey and Lieutenant Folds did a great job presenting it, so I learned a lot last time. So.
I agree, and I think the concerns that I heard from the community and from the teachers, I think in a thoughtful and respectful manner that it's going to be rolled out, I think is going to be very important. And
I think the thing that was helpful for me was the emphasis on, it's not like a series of steps you go through. It's options that people are educated to understand that they can do any of those things, and they have to. I think the other thing that was encouraging is recurring training for staff and students, right? Like fire drills, right? Because that's the important part.
Yeah.
If it sort of becomes muscle memory, then it's going to work a lot better.
Yeah. And the other thing I want to mention, this isn't technically a curriculum decision which we would be eligible to review, so I applaud you in having the forethought to bring this to the committee for a vote of support. So thank you for that. I think it's very important, and it's an appropriate step.
I did hear from a teacher that she said she watches the meetings and said she was very excited to have this implemented. She can't wait for it to start. I would ask as a parent, I would love to hear, and the officers did mention this, the see how that gets rolled out. I know it won't be to elementary, but how it gets rolled out to the middle and high school students. I just would be curious to know how they're encouraged to either engage in or not engage in the counter portion.
Yeah, so our plan is to do a meeting this spring and then another meeting in the fall where we'll have parents be able to ask those questions of everyone. So this will be an interactive rollout. So you'll get a chance to ask that question to the experts.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Any other conversation? No. Great. So all in favor of accepting Alice K through 12 as part of our community rollout, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Abstained? 5-0.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Last item is hopefully concluding our discussion on summer retreat dates. I know that the administration is planning to have their preparatory retreat in August.
Yep.
And I know I was hoping that maybe we would consider meeting as the school committee early in the summer so that we can give the administration a little heads up on the things that we think are important. June, July, something early enough that it's before everyone disappears, but it's early enough that if Dr. Price wants to take stock in the conversations, that there's enough time to prepare for the administration. So with that as the backdrop.
Should we do
Well, we said last time we were supposed to send Bev our dates.
Yeah,
and
she
Right.
didn't get
I did that.
Right, but
Does she do?
I'm a brownie, I did that.
Does she do doodle?
Not yet.
Does she do doodle polls?
Not yet. Would it be, well, first of all, do we agree that it makes sense for us to meet as a school committee?
Yes.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
give some guidance moving forward? And do we agree that we want to meet earlier in the year rather than immediately before the administrative retreat?
I think that's fair to give Dr. Price any
Okay.
time that she might need.
Rather than
So-
the day before they meet.
That's fair. So with that as the backdrop, can we ask Bev to send around a doodle calendar where we might be able to provide our availability in the June, July time period, and we'll go from there if we have
Maybe our
consensus?
being unavailable might be easier to provide, I don't know.
so June, so we're looking at, I think, probably not we would be starting June 27th, right? I mean, once school gets out on the
Yes.
22nd, we would go past that.
Yes.
Just so you know, I'm planning, I'm sure many of you, I don't think the July 4th week is the week for this.
No.
And then the following week, I'm actually, along with Gilly and Jim, or some portion of us, we're at the superintendent's conference the following week.
So, so the
week of
schedule.
the 11th. So we're
Okay.
probably looking at
The week of the
18th, or, so I'm just being,
Yeah.
so some of the dates, you might say, well, why not? It's because
That's fine.
the fourth week doesn't make sense, and we're at the superintendent's conference the following week.
And that's in July.
Yep.
Okay, so maybe, and again,
The 18th, then we can.
From the 11th onward.
do we want to
Or
consider?
the 27th week. So I'll have her send out both of those on a doodle,
Can we just try to do it now?
if you want to.
I mean, I'm just,
Yeah, it's fine.
are we looking days, are we looking nights, what's the time frame, Mr.
What I
Chair?
would propose is that we can easily fill a half-day.
Half
And
day.
it would be either.
Don't sell yourself short.
Late morning and lunch.
I was going to say that.
The agenda should be productive, it should be informative, et cetera. So I would propose we plan, for a half-day. And I think in the past, we've done like
It was 8 to 1 last time.
Yeah.
That many.
Yeah, morning through lunch.
So
or-
if we look the week of June 27th,
I can't do that week.
okay?
Okay, next.
So then we would need to skip the next 2
2
weeks.
weeks.
So we're looking at the 18th.
Of
July.
July.
Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, the 19th, 20th, or 21st.
Can you guys who have real day jobs get on?
Surprisingly, all three of those are open right now.
I can't do the 20th, I have jury duty.
We can.
Now you've got a reason not to, yeah.
I already moved it, so.
Probably the 21st too, so the 19th sounds like it may be.
Tuesday, the 19th?
Sure.
Just in case you get lucky enough to.
Do you want to?
Yeah, beforehand, right, yes. Very
The
smart,
21st is
Andrew.
better for me, but if it's an 8 to 1 thing, probably would work out. If I had to leave a little early, it's okay, no big deal.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is July 19th, 8 to 1 in pencil, and we'll firm
Does that
that?
work for you, Gilly?
Did you say the 21st?
19th.
I know, I'm worried about you. Are you in school that whole week?
Yeah.
Do you want to
Go the
defer
following
to
week. What's the following week?
20
I can do the phones.
25th?
Sorry, I gotta scroll there.
26th, 27th, 28th. It's just that both Jim and, what are your school weeks this summer, do you know?
First week of August.
Okay, so I do think it's useful to have then
Absolutely. No, no.
three assistant
Yes,
superintendents with us.
Hopefully a fourth.
Three assistant superintendents.
We only have-
Oh, right,
Right.
That week, the 27th, the 28th are better for me.
I can do anything.
I can do,
Of course you can.
I can do either of those.
I can do any of those three, too.
Want to shoot for Wednesday,
27th?
27th?
Yeah.
Sure.
I'm going to Red Sox game that night, so. that's
Perfect.
nice.
We'll be done by 1.
So am I. It's in my calendar.
All right, how
Fan the
fun.
race.
Okay, so,
Together.
so let's, and again, now we have the date, let's try to get the agenda topics, if you'd be so kind as to
Section
forward
36.
those,
Okay.
what you have in mind, and maybe if we could get last year's agenda, or the last couple of years' agendas.
So I think we'll have
distributed.
to do the last couples of years, because at least the one that you did with me was really about onboarding me.
Right, right. Okay, super, so,
I'm
yeah.
sorry, we're planning 8 to 1.
8 a.m. to 1 a.m., no, wait, 8 a.m. to 1 p.m., and I assume we'd have this facility available?
Yeah.
Okay.
There'll be a huge demand.
Oh,
on
I'm
this
sure.
facility on July 27th.
So we'll also, so again, if you can forward agenda topics to Bev and myself, just so we can at least take a look at what your thoughts are, and then if Bev can send out a few years of previous agendas, so you can get a feel for what
And
we
is
forward
it,
today.
Brian, is it okay if I forward agenda topics too?
Please do.
Okay. I just am thinking that I'll have some, it's your retreat, but.
Right, right. No, but I think your insights are very,
Okay.
very, very valued and useful. Okay, so with that said, do we have any additional? Sorry?
No, I just wanted to ask a question. I had said that the first week that you picked for your retreat, I'm on vacation.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, but that's okay, because it's not, now that we've done it here, we'll be fine.
Because that's them just to do their
That's
own.
us, and then realistically, I think I'll be ready to come back for you guys in September, probably early September.
okay, so do we want to have another meeting with you and the leadership team and us? Sort of a follow-up meeting? That was sort of what I was thinking.
So yes, I think that the challenge with that, Stan, is, let me think about that, and I'll get back to you.
So I'm thinking that,
Yep.
shortly after, but if...
Right, I just want to think about
And
it.
again, it's like, it's a half day, it's
Yeah, it's just tough. I try very hard to not schedule the principals the week of the 22nd because they're getting ready for teachers to come back. So I want to just be, I need to think about that.
Okay, all set, Mr. Lippert? Great, so I'd like to open up for public comment. Do we have a public?
We do.
Thank you, welcome.
Christy Hale, 45 Lacey. I'll wear my first hat as a parent. I just wanted to give a shout out to the North Andover Police, especially Officer Caffrey. They did a Rad Kids self-defense program at the middle school all during break. And it wasn't hugely attended, but it was probably a 2 children to 1 officer representation, and it was fantastic. They did 3 hours each day, Tuesday through Friday, and on the 5th day, or on the Friday that week, the kids actually got to put on gear and went up against the officers and did the attack moves so they could attempt to get away and show and demonstrate for the parents all that they learned during the week. And my point to Officer Caffrey, I've seen her several times since from being at the middle school every day, there was so much that they covered with the kids that a lot of it could be pulled out in very specific concepts handled with each group of kids at varying ages, from telephone safety to internet safety. And I know we try to tackle some of it in various classes, and one of her comments was if we were to put a curriculum in place, it needs to come to school committee. And so I very much encouraged her to speak with Dr. Price about possibly incorporating some of that into some of the programming, because a lot of what they did was just absolutely fantastic, and really just kind of like the Alice training of making it muscle memory and really prepping the kids and giving them smart decision making. Don't walk alone, be with a friend, know where things are, be paying attention to the world around you, take those things in. So it was absolutely fantastic, and they said they'll be doing it again for some of the younger kids. This one was generally 5th graders through 8th graders. So that was fantastic. And now I'll put on my other hat. So as the president of the North Andover Foundation for Education, I just want to share with everyone that we have our first official fundraiser that kicked off today. So if you wouldn't mind clicking, Jim, to the Make a Donation page. Oh, except that apparently...
Don't worry, you can get through.
Oops, that might be inappropriate.
If you can scroll down and click on the Donate Now for the Giving by Credit Card online. The big red button.
You want me to click on
Yeah,
that?
yeah, please.
How much you gonna do?
Everybody's all working. I was just saying, it's overtime pay.
Nobody's watching.
So this is our very first campaign working with this company called Fund Forward. They're a startup out of MIT, and the site just went live this morning. So what this allows is working with the PTOs to get this message out to the community at large, beyond the parents in the school buildings, to help raise the funds that we need for the second phase of the model classroom. So the PTOs have generally covered this first year. Most of us feel pretty confident that we can handle it. So if you don't mind scrolling. So this is Lisa Frackleton at Sargent demonstrating the technology. So the way the site works very quickly is you can pick your gift to give either monthly or one time. And after you make your pick, so just pick, we won't go all the way through. Just click on any number.
Click on which
Quick, you're
Yeah.
giving $20 overall, James, just in case.
There we go.
$600.
So that you'll see that next you're allowed to pick your schools. So you can add your schools. So that's all the schools in the district. And the way they're organized is by need. So it kicks to the middle school first. Once you add a school, add whichever school.
Yeah.
And you scroll down a little bit more. They get added to an area where you're allowed to split your gift. So what we're hoping is that as parents look at this, they will be able to make their donation. A lot of times, parents are used to donating maybe at the elementary school for specific things. They're not always aware they can contribute money to the middle school and the high school throughout the year. So we're hoping that by driving traffic to this area, and especially community-wide, because there are a lot of people that don't realize that we actually are doing this project, regardless of how much it gets discussed, that once this gets out there, we'll hopefully be gaining some traction for the fundraising that we can help to support this project. We will also be kicking off next week, fingers crossed, the Honor Thy Teacher campaign, which is similar to what they do in Newton and in Newburyport. We're working right now to get the electronic processing part up and running, because that is a little, it fell down in 6 years, if you can imagine. So we're working on that right now. So these are just some very exciting opportunities we have. If you do have a Facebook account, I would ask that you like us on Facebook. We're at North Andover Foundation for Education. So that's NAFE, not EF. North Andover Foundation for Education. And then share that, because there'll be messages coming up repeatedly about this specific funding campaign through Fund Forward. They've already launched their first set of messages for us.
So right now is, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, you can ask anything.
I just think one thing that's important, Christy, excuse me,
Yes.
Mr. Tracy,
No
is
worries.
that they're very much targeting social media, alumni, people maybe not connected to the school.
Outside of the
area that we
PTOs.
don't hit time and time again, because we have parents
my
parents pretty well here. This is about the folks that are out there that might want to support the North Andover Public Schools but aren't getting hit through the PTOs.
Recent graduates.
Reaching graduates,
long-term
for
graduates out of the
alumni.
area.
So using
People who live in
Facebook
Tommy Dorn kids.
messaging and advertising, they're connecting us with people who live in North Andover, went to school in North Andover. So that's really why this was important to do, because there's a belief among a number of folks that there's a whole group of people who might want to support the North Andover Public Schools who aren't being targeted through our traditional PTO route. So that makes sense?
Yes, but it's important to differentiate, because there are parents who are getting hit constantly.
Right.
And so to put this on top of it, you have to be careful, because it can cause frustration and confusion and anger.
So this is more of sharing the message.
This is great.
That there is someone with whom I became associated through the Friends of the Library just recently. She's a trustee. She's not married. She doesn't have kids in North Andover. But she grew up here and lives here and very much would love to know what's going on and will support things like this. And it's been a great relationship, because she actually is also on the North Andover Improvement Society. And I think that's the right... Evie, yes.
Yeah.
And so they're actually working with us, because the middle school, for those of you who don't know, they have an entire courtyard project in place for redoing the entire courtyard within the center. And the student leadership team has really put together some great plans along with the teachers in the building. And through social networking and some other connections, we've gotten the picnic tables donated that we need for the space. The Voc in Lawrence is going to be building the benches for the student learning
Okay,
area.
good. I'm
We'll be
glad it worked
buying, we'll be paying for it, and most likely through the Improvement Society, that they'll do the funding for the student benches. And today we just got the paint donated through White Street, because that was a fun little connection. So anyway, it's been very exciting. So if anybody has any questions or is looking for more information,
I do.
let us know.
Why did you folks decide to allow people to choose what school they want to donate to?
Because we found that targeted campaigning tends to work best if people get to direct where their money's going and they don't think it's just going into a general pool where maybe they don't want to see it being used. We're hoping that by seeing the need-based in that order, that you would see, if you click on details for any of them, it actually tells you how many model classrooms we're trying to help raise the money for at that school. So that might help. Like if you click on any one of them, you'll see like some schools it's 19,000, another school might be 25,000, some other school might only be 2,000. It really just depended on what those needs were.
I guess I would just say that what was just outlined to me, you're targeting people that don't generally donate. How would they know which school to donate to?
They don't have to pick any. They can just donate it directly to the general fund.
I understand those people, they wouldn't know. But my point, I guess what I'm getting at is, first of all, is this just going to model classrooms right now?
Yes.
This specific campaign drive is simply to raise money for the model classroom, and if they choose to donate some to the general NAEF fund, we'll be able to reallocate the funds.
The flip side of it, though, is what if there's a lot of money that, we know Kittredge doesn't need a lot of money right now for model classroom. What if they get $10,000 with it? Is that going to upset the donor?
If you click on Kittredge,
Yeah.
what we said is this is their goal, but any money raised will go to support other technology needs in their school.
At Kittredge.
At Kittredge.
And what if, well, I guess I still struggle with that my personal opinion should be one big pool of money, and that you guys should determine where the needs are. The donors.
We went back and forth on that a lot, and in talking to a lot of people and getting a lot of weigh-in from the PTOs, everyone felt that it was important to let people be specific if they wanted to be, to give them that opportunity.
Yeah.
if you want to, like I said, if you want to make a general donation, 100% can come to our fund and we can reallocate it. It really is trying to put it out there for if you are an alumni of a specific school and that's where you want to support. One of the biggest challenges we have is that there is very little support at the middle school and the high school levels, but we couldn't take every other school off the table and say, well, we know that the money really needs to go to the middle school and the high school, so if you're going to donate, it's just going to go to those buildings. Because if you're maybe a family that doesn't have kids in the school yet, but you know you're going to be going to the Franklin School, you might want to make sure that they're going to have the technology in that space when your kids get there.
Yeah, I personally like the fact that you can target for the general fund, target for a school, or target for wherever the need is the most. And that gives you that flexibility. So I appreciate the flexibility that the interface provides to do whatever I want to do if I don't have kids.
We'll see how it goes. If people come back with major criticisms, it's something to give back to Nick, because this is a brand new company, and so they're looking for feedback that we can provide to them.
Sure.
I have no idea what happened.
Do they get
Our time is up.
As we do, just like any other funding site.
What's their percentage?
Oh, what did we get them down to? 7%.
7%?
Yep.
And if people don't want to pay the 7, can they write a check
They
directly?
can write a check directly
To the
through the
PTO.
PTOs. Yep. Or directly to the North Andover Foundation on our website. There's actually the address where the checks can be sent to if you choose not to do it online.
Great.
The other nice thing about the online is it's similar to like an NPR where you can make your donation happen monthly. So it might not be that you have $100 at one time, but you can donate $10 a month. So what that would do is just hit your credit card for $10 every month for 12 months.
And what about matching from employers?
We're working on it. They will be putting a message on the Fund Forward site. There will be something actually closer to the end of the drive.
Because that might be worth 7% to have them go chase down the employers.
Right. Well, we felt that something is better than nothing for a lot of people if they're unaware of where they can donate.
Yep.
We're willing to take that little bit of a hit because some money is better than no money.
But it is a 503C, correct?
We are, so nothing comes off for us, the 501c3.
501, yes, thank you.
Yes, all
But the
those
software
letters and
company is
numbers
not. I know.
together in an order, yes. We are, that is correct.
So the donations are all tax deductible?
The donations are 100% tax deductible, and they will get, any donor will get a letter of confirmation saying they made a tax deductible donation, and after the drive is over, they will receive a statement saying that this is your tax deferred
Thank
to
you
the fullest extent of the law, as I've been told.
Yeah.
So, thank you for breathing
So-
life into this.
So thank you very much for letting me
I wanted to
update
say,
everybody.
we've been we talked about doing this for 5 years, and what we didn't have was Christy Hale.
Yes.
That's right.
So thank you so much for really.
So thank you
getting
for
us-
indulging me and letting me share that with everybody.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so much. Thanks for getting us all going.
Thank you, Christy.
Thanks, Chris.
So before we adjourn, any other school committee comment?
I just wanted to, we didn't do it in passing, but I wanted to do one more shout out.
Please.
For the 3 teachers, right? For our weight group. right?
Yes.
We didn't mention our teachers' names, right? Right?
Excuse me.
Mike Leatherway.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah Durkin, and
Justin Smalley.
Justin Smalley.
Yes, thank you.
They did a shout out for the
Oh,
work.
their work. Thank you.
4 goals and multiple first place robotics.
Yes. Yes.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good point. Mr. McGavin?
2 quick things. Saturday is actually one of my favorite days of the year because it is the 5th grade service project. So at the middle school, and you probably know this, but I think it is 9 to 2?
10 to 1.
10 to 1.
10 to 1. I'm really late. 10 to 1. Which is an opportunity, and there's probably a half a dozen or so organizations that come and take things that people have in their homes that they're no longer using, whether it is clothing or household goods or things that children have outgrown, and then they help to redistribute those to families and community members who are in need. And I love it because as soon as that day is done, I start stockpiling of everything that I want to get rid of, but I don't want to have a yard sale. But it is absolutely fantastic, and if this year is anything like last year, I mean, both of the cafeterias at the middle school, I mean, they were just full of stuff. And it was actually so intense that the organizations like Big Brothers and Habitat for Humanity, they came with these massive trucks to get the stuff, and they couldn't take
18-wheelers?
all of it. They had 18-wheelers come So, we always talk about North Andover and it being generous and all of that, and maybe it's a way that we get rid of some of the things that we don't want in our home, but we're repurposing that, and I think that that's just a great day.
Is there any place for people to drop stuff off ahead of time? No?
You can
My
take
house.
it to the Goodwill.
Yeah, that's called dumping, that's not allowed.
So no, I'm just wondering, for those of us who don't live here. And
Right.
I don't think the middle school staff, they didn't want me to leave boxes there.
Okay, good enough.
So-
Yeah.
To know.
All right.
Do they give out receipts?
They do not.
No receipts.
No, there's no
Okay.
receipts. And the other thing, which I think, just impacts so many kids in our town, Saturday is also at, I believe, 9 o'clock, the kickoff of the baseball and the softball parade, which starts on Main Street and then walks down to Carl Thomas, where there's kind of the opening day ceremony. And then that ceremony ends and concludes with the Challenger League for our residents and neighboring town residents whose towns may not have it, for them to have their first kickoff game on the Carl Thomas Upper. But then following that, at I believe noon, is the dedication of the McAvoy Field.
It's
Is it
11.
Oh, my times are all up. I'm in the wrong time zone, I think.
The playground?
The McAvoy Field's kind of across from the airport, and the playground, and the softball fields and soccer fields in the fall. So Saturday is a very packed day for North Andover.
Go sunshine.
And then
Yeah,
just
no
one last quick question. Even though I think we have done this in the past, our next meeting is the 12th, but do we have to record a meeting on record for town meeting on the 10th?
I don't know. We do normally post and then have a brief get-together. I think that'd be a good idea if we could get Bev to post for school committee meeting.
There's no legal requirement for us to have a meeting before town.
There isn't one, but typically at a tradition we do, it's the opportunity to maybe get a nibble before the long meeting.
And if there's any recommendation, I think we've done that. Mr. Tracy kind of prompted us to vote, or recommend that we vote no on Article 15.
19.
But if there's anything else that were to come up,
that would be the time for us to deliberate on that. Yep. So very good.
And we can give you your message when the Article 15 comes up, right? Say this.
Say this, Mr. Gross. Yes, absolutely.
That's it.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Tracy, anything?
No, I think Mr. McDevitt covered
He's got it all. He's got it all.
I had better dates and times, but... How about the spring fling? You didn't mention the spring fling.
It's only Kittredge.
Oh, it's only...
I don't mean only Kittredge, but it doesn't impact the whole community.
Tell us about the spring fling, Mr. Tracy.
No, I'm good now. You just ruined it.
Ms. Mabley?
I will just mention it's 9:45.
Thank you.
So
Welcome to the school committee, Ms. Mabley.
and a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?